But not just research, we allow space for dialogue such as this, and these dialogues usually lead to influencing policy with different stakeholders. And for the past couple of years, we've been partnering with the Heinrich Böll Foundation to make this possible in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. And as a result of this work, we have some landmark publications that I'm sure some of you have already picked up. One is Energy for Whom? Scenarios for Eastern Africa, which is a publication you should pick because it provides possible energy futures depending on what direction our countries will go when it comes to energy development in the region, nationally as well. And then we have a second book that focuses purely on energy issues in Kenya. It is titled Energy for What? Contemporary Energy Issues and Dilemmas in Kenya. So if the subject of energy is new to you, this is a publication that you might pick up and read. And kind of acquaint yourself with the issues so that you're able to join some of this conversation from a more informed angle. Before we start the conversation for today, we did invite a very good friend of ours. He's also a very talented young Kenyan man, a very conscious thinker, to come and open up this forum for us today. So without any further ado, I'm going to welcome Dauphin. That's his stage name. His official name is Dennis Mutuma. So please just give him a round of applause as he takes the stage.
Yes, how many people here know the history of Nairobi? Like, the history of Nairobi. How old is Nairobi? Seems like, by the look of things, it looks like it's a couple of centuries old, yeah? It's actually one century and 24, 25 years? Okay, this year is like, a snapshot of Nairobi history. This piece is called Kibera. Time traveler. Natumia graffiti kama poto kusafiri kwa nyakati. Narudi nyuma karne moja na miaka 24. Exactly. A lone wise man kwenye quest. Nikifuata nyota ya historia, kushuhudia. A virgin swamp give birth to city. Vijiji kugeuka kwa miji na miji kuwa jiji. Na cheki msitu ikipave way for shanties. Wanyama mwitu kugeuzwa exotic cuisines na trophies. Enkare Nairobi kabla wanubi wabatize Kibra. I guess ni msitu bado, ila badala ya wanyama kwa miti tumejaza watu kwa mabati. Barely enough food kwa kabati kulisha wenyeji. Barely enough kwa wallet kuhakikisha balance kwa diet. So chipo mwitu, chapo na mutura ndo zinajaza matumbo. Toka Enkare Nairobi, hali ya hewa saini nare Nairobi. Si ajabu mafuriko kuacha wenyeji bila makazi Kibera. Na kiangazi kufanya keja kushika nare Nairobi. Si ajabu maji safi imekuwa ni gold kwa mfereji. Iliambiwa mbu anapenda joto. Si ajabu malaria bado ndio sababu kubwa Lang'ata ni mwisho wa safari kwa watoto. Ingawa bado kuna ideas golden kwa akili. Ndani ya hii mili iko trapped kwa ufukara. Na bado kuna nia ya kufikia ushindi. Kwa hizi streets vichochoro ndo barabara. Na bado kuna ndoto za power. Ingawa blackouts ndo oda ya siku. Kwa hii city iko famed kuwa located chini ya solar. Cheki Kibra usoni kupitia macho ya wasanii wa kichora. Hii sanaa ndo taa. Hizi paintings zinatupea picha vile Kibera inaweza kaa. Zinaangazia Kibera vile inafaa. Vile Kibera itakaa. Vile Kibera itafaa. Hizi mabati zinajua extremes between kustand tall na kubomoka. Na hizi shanty zinajua dreams za wenyeji wanasaka kuomoka. Hizi mabati zinajua extremes. Na hizi shanty zinajua dreams zinajua dreams. Zinajua dreams.
Please, could you give him a round of applause? Thank you, Dauphin, for giving us a little time travel. I think you've probably learned over the years that we like to time travel a lot to the past and into the future. At this moment, I want to invite Frederick Njau from the Heinrich Bull Foundation to just give us a few remarks from Heinrich Bull. Talk to us about what you guys do with energy featuring with us before we welcome the much-awaited panel for our discussion.
Good afternoon. My name is Frederick Njau, and I'm with Heinrich Bull Foundation. Sometimes we are referred as Heinrich Bull Stiftung. The foundation is a German one, and affiliated to German political party called the Greens. Mostly you'll find that most of German foundations are affiliated to a political party. And how we wish one day our Kenyan political party will reach at that level, whereby all the political parties have a foundation and they can also be able to support other small organizations. Besides that, the foundation that I represent works in different areas, and this is one of the areas that we are partnering with SID for the last, I think, almost close to 10 years now. Percy already mentioned that we started the journey when we were trying to understand the energy scenarios in the region, and she did mention the countries, it's Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. Unfortunately, we have dropped Ethiopia for some reasons. But in the journey, we have realized so many things, learned so many things in the region as far as energy questions is concerned. But before I come to that issues of energy, it's good that I also tell you what other areas that we are working in. We are working also in area of gender democracy, ideally looking at the whole idea of how gender, relations about different genders, about politics around issues of women, also issues of patriarchy, feminism, if you want, among many other things. We are also in another program area we call dialogue and civic spaces, especially looking at the issues of the missing voices, the voices that are not listened to, enforced disappearance, shrinking spaces of the civil society around that issues. And another area we work on is agroecology and food rights, looking at the whole concept of rights around food in the country. And now the final area that I coordinate is what we call sustainable development, the banner that you see at the far right. And I'm coordinating 3 areas around here. One is on politics of plastics. We all know the menace that comes about with plastic. Yeah, today we are holding one as a plastic bottle, but maybe next time we come with our own bottles to reduce the use of plastic. The second area is what we call extractive and resources and infrastructure. This is a huge area whereby we are looking at the mega infrastructure project and the impact they have on rights of communities to resources, that's land, water, and other aspects. We're also looking at the extractions of resources like minerals and oil and gas, coal development in Kenya, among many other issues. But the final issue area where we are here today is on energy futures. The project that we have been working on with this idea for the last, like I mentioned, 8 or 9 years. Ideally here is look at the whole spectrum of energy and how it impacts also on citizens, the costing, the production, the whole value chain of energy, and not forgetting about renewable energy. Today we are here because of the one topic that is very, very sensitive, and I must say it's very sensitive because it divides opinion. If you ask many people, they will tell you how nuclear energy is very important. If you ask other people, they will tell you don't touch nuclear because it's dangerous. So we are here today because we have experts and we have people who will help us to understand, is Kenya going in the right direction, or we should be very, very much be careful about nuclear energy. So today's forum is, again, very important, as SID formulated and thought around it, because also it might help answer a few questions that I do have, and I want to pose them to the people who will be having the panel, or be the panel today. They are not 21, like 50 cents, but they are only around 8. So one question that I keep on asking myself is, will nuclear, once we engage on nuclear, will it be impacted by climate change? What will happen in the situation whereby the power plant, where it's established, it's too hot or it is too cold? Maybe that's a question that we didn't answer. Again, is nuclear very necessary for our base load? That's the biggest question that comes to everyone's mind. Is it very important for our base load? Again, if it is answered, then we have a good discussion. It's also been argued that nuclear is good, and that's the main topic of today's discussion. Is nuclear power is carbon neutral. Is that true or not? Yeah. And in economic terms, another question is, in economic terms, will nuclear energy generate more jobs, compared to other sources of energy like renewable energy? Yeah. And is nuclear energy affordable? Again, I understand also in the panel there's a person who is looking at the whole issues of climate finance and other issues. But is nuclear energy affordable? Or will it make even our cost of electricity cheaper or become lower? Is nuclear energy safe? Many people will ask that question. And my final question is it easy, as it said, to integrate nuclear energy to our grid? Yeah, we know our grid currently as it is. Is it possible to integrate the whole nuclear into our grid? I think those questions might not be answered today by the panel. That's to our moderators. But I think there are questions that need to linger in our minds, even as we have this discussion today, from now and also in future. It's a discussion that we want to have moving forward, to support as a foundation. We don't have answers as far as nuclear is concerned, but we believe in this country of ours, there are different people, or very, very many experts who have answers in as far as nuclear is concerned. So thank you very much for attending this meeting today, and I look forward to more engagement now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. For this forum, we're also partnering with Strathmore University, but they're going to be in the panel, so I'm not going to ask them to come for an opening remark, because they're going to be part of the panel discussion. So, Dan, I think it's time to invite our panelists on the stage. And please give them some encouragement, because some of those questions that Fred has asked are very hard questions, but we're really looking to them for the answers as the experts and the people working directly in the field, and people also who are doing the research. So as we call each and every single one of the panelists to come up, we're just gonna invite you to give them some encouragement as they come up. So for the first panelist for the day, we're gonna invite Mr. Chesire Edwin from the Nuclear Power and Energy Agency. Please give him a round of applause as he comes.
And as Pasi has clearly mentioned, we're joined today by one of our other partners, and this is on the research perspective, and that would be Dominic. Karibu sana, Dominic.
As Dominic is coming to represent Strathmore University under the Strathmore Energy Research Center, I'm going to also invite two of our audience discussants. They were initially not sitting in the panel, But we've invited them to come into the panel because their voices matter. So at this point, I'm going to invite Faith Kivuti from the Coalition for Human Rights in Development to join us on the stage. Please give her a round of applause as she makes her way. Thank you, Faith. And our last panelist to join us as a discussant again is Leo Kemboi from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Please give me a round of applause as he comes. Today's session is going to be very, very participatory. The conversation is not only going to be happening here on the stage, but we're going to be inviting your voices as well. So you will not only be hearing voices from the stage. There are mics that are going to be going around. So please do ask your questions, do share your knowledge and your perspectives as we go into this debate and conversation today. I also want to welcome the participants who are joining us via Zoom, and also just to mention and introduce Crispus Onkoba, our communications officer, who is going to be our online moderator. So for the participants online, if you have a question or you'd like to speak into the forum, we can hear you and you can hear us. So please do let Crispus know, and we will invite you into the conversation today. So our first question is actually a very easy one, right, Dan? Our first question is purely just us asking you to introduce yourselves.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Leo Kemboi. I'm an economist by training. I work at the Institute of Economic Affairs. We've worked together in the past on the scenarios, and I'm a big fan of energy because for the economic growth to happen, energy is required.
Hi, everyone. I might be looking shocked because I am shocked. I did not expect to be up here. My name is Faith. I work with the Coalition for Human Rights in Development as the community resource exchange person. And as the name suggests, I mostly work with communities or groups who are supporting communities that are affected by either development projects or international investments. So just trying to see how best their rights can be achieved in a way, or protected, how best they can defend their rights, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so my name is Kemei Kibet Dominic from Strathmore Energy Research Center. I am an electrical engineer, energy modeler, and researcher. So what we do at Strathmore Energy Research Center, we research on emerging energy issues. So like, for instance, we have trainings on solar. I know people might not believe this, but as early as late 2010s, solar was still relatively new in Kenya, and but right now it's become a mainstream technology. So we do such. Even nuclear, it might look new, but very soon it might be a mainstream energy solution. So we look at that, and then we model what are the pathways in which we can achieve that future. So, and what are the bottlenecks? So that is the kind of research that goes on in Strathmore Energy Research Center, which is a department at Strathmore University. And I'm happy to be here.
Okay. Finally, and last but not the least, my name is Edwin Chesire. I am an engineer by profession. I'm a mechanical engineer, but also I'm an energy expert. And I'm a certified nuclear security expert with the World Institute of Nuclear Security. I work with Nuclear Power and Energy Agency as a principal officer, capacity building, but also I double up as a national liaison assistant that I coordinate peaceful application of nuclear technology and science between Kenya and the International Atomic Energy Agency. And lastly, I am radioactive, so are you. Thank you.
Thank you for those introductions. Very interesting. I've never heard anyone introduce himself as radioactive, so I think I'm going to pick up on that much later on. The first question is actually for you, Edwin. Tell us a little bit who NUPER is. A lot of Kenyans wanted to know who NUPER is and what NUPER does, and also what the Kenya Nuclear Regulatory Association is and what it does.
Thank you so much, Percy, for this question. And I really want to bring an apology from our CEO, who was supposed to be here. He was in Kilifi yesterday. It's the 2nd of December. Every year is a nuclear day. You know, we have many days, but I think yesterday was given the nuclear day. And we were celebrating in Kilifi, and he was not able to make it. And this morning I spoke together with him, and he's actually, hopefully maybe he's joining online, but he is aware that we are here and is looking forward for such an engagement together with each and every person in the country and beyond the borders. Now, coming to what is Nuclear Power and Energy Agency, I want to draw it back towards when the country made the decision that we need to have the nuclear into the energy mix. We all remember that in 2007, there was what is called the post-election violence. And after that, there was a team that was crafted to do what is called the economic recovery strategy. And this team, in their own wisdom, they proposed to have what is called the National Economic Social Council. This is the council that used to advise the government on how to be able now to really spring back and have economic and social progress. So in the same time, there is what is called the Vision 2030 was created, and this Vision 2030 had 3 pillars. One pillar was economic, another one was social, another one was political. And at the end of the day, for us to be able now to attain this Vision 2030, one of the major items that is enabler was the energy. And my friend from Economic Institute of Research said that actually energy is an important enabler for us to see economic development. So by that time, the National Economic Social Council advised the government that we need to go nuclear. So what the government did, they came together and established a project committee. It's called Nuclear Electricity Project Committee. It was under the Ministry of Energy. That is when actually I was employed. I was employed in 2010, 2011, where I've been there for the last 13 years, and I've grown towards that. So in 2012, with a specific mandate, the mandate of the Nuclear Electricity Project Committee was to fast-track the implementation of nuclear into the energy mix. So in 2012, the committee was changed into a board, and the board was called the Kenya Nuclear Electricity Board. From 2012 to 2019, where we had what is called the Energy Act of 2019. So the Energy Act of 2019 actually transformed the board into an agency, which is called the Nuclear Power and Energy Agency, with 3 key mandates. The first mandate, we are supposed actually to be the Nuclear Energy Program Implementing Organization. This is organization under the nomenclature of the International Atomic Energy Agency that is able to help an embarking country to successfully implement the nuclear power plant. So that is the first mandate. The second mandate, what we are doing the capacity building in the energy and petroleum sector. And the third mandate, we are doing research and development in the energy and petroleum sector. But above all this we are also coordinating the technical cooperation between Kenya and IAEA on all peaceful, and I want to repeat, peaceful application of nuclear science and technology. And for our information, Kenya has been a member of the International Atomic Energy Agency since 1965, where we as a country, we as a population, we as a citizen, we have been using peaceful application in human health, in agriculture, in industry, in education, in water resource, in all aspects. I can tell you, where you can mention, you cannot miss a nuclear technology application. So, but what have you been doing? From 2012 to 2019, we did 3 or 4 things. Number one, we started developing the human resource. We have so far developed almost 66 people, Kenyans, who have been trained in nuclear science and nuclear technology. Secondly, we have been doing what's called pre-feasibility study. Pre-feasibility study is what you're supposed to do for you to be able now to understand how the nuclear power plant will be. Number 3, we have been doing what is called the Integrated Nuclear Infrastructure Review Mission. What does it mean? It means that for a country to go nuclear, it must follow a guideline that has been prepared and according to best practice by the International Atomic Energy Agency. It's called the milestone approach. The milestone approach has 3 phases, and at the end of each phase, there is a milestone. So the first phase is what is called knowledgeable decision before embarking on a nuclear power plant. At the end of that decision, you now have a political and economic decision and goodwill for you to go to nuclear. The second one is a preparatory works before inviting the bids. At the end of that phase, you have invitation of bids. And the last one is activity towards the construction of the nuclear power plant, where now you'll be constructing and commissioning the nuclear plant at the end of the phase. So currently, Kenya is in phase 2, where we are now doing the preparatory work before the invitation of bids. But that aside, we have been also doing what's called strategic environmental and social assessment, where for every plan, every program, and every policy, you're supposed now to do the CESA, which we have been able now to do. And we have been doing all other activities of citing, because that's an important. We have been doing the regulatory and legislative framework, so that at the end of the day, in 2019 also, there was what is called the Radiation Protection Board, which used to regulate the conventional uses of nuclear technology, but it was renamed after the Nuclear Regulatory Act was passed in 2019, and now it is called the Kenya Nuclear Regulatory Authority, which has the role of ensuring that the people, the property, the environment is protected against the harmful effect of ionizing radiation. And also it has the mandate of ensuring that safety, security, and safeguard is being maintained. I believe that this is just but a tip of the iceberg. The iceberg itself is going to come. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Edwin. You've said a lot of things there, and I believe it was necessary so that people really understand the authorities that are behind the Kenyan nuclear energy development. Do have a follow-up question for you, just based off a couple of things you mentioned. As everybody probably knows, Kenya's energy demand is rising with industrialization and also population growth. And so the demand for energy will continue to rise, especially given the state of energy poverty in different parts of the country. Where do you see nuclear energy fitting into this equation? So that's the first follow-up question for you.
Okay, thank you so much, and I believe that's very, very important, Percy, because I want again to go back. In 2010, the country usually have what is called a long-term energy plan. We had what is called the least cost power development plan. And when you look at the 2010-2030 least cost power development plan, it was actually attributing that by the year 2030, Kenya will be having an excess of 25,000 megawatts. And nuclear was to supply 4,000 megawatts. But because of, as we progress, and there was a lot of flagship projects which were supposed to be undertaken. And actually one of them is that electrification of the SGR. SGR was supposed to be an electric train. And you can see there was supposed to be cities which are supposed now to use a lot of energy. But now because of the changing of items and all these things, Then, as we are currently, we have what is called the least cost power development of 2024-2044, which nuclear has been earmarked to be on course between 2034 and 2036. And at this particular moment, we are looking at, because initially, and there has been a lot of development, we used to have the large nuclear power plant between 1,000 megawatts to 1,700 megawatts, but also there have been evolution of small modular reactors, which is between 100 to 300 megawatts. So by the year 2034, we are looking that the country will be having the first nuclear power plant.
And that's very insightful. That's actually a primer for the conversation as we start. And I think there was a question from one of our registrants, and basically he was asking what institutional frameworks and policies are in place to support or regulate the adoption of nuclear energy. And I would follow that up with probably for the purview to understand if environmental impact assessments have been done. You've mentioned CESA. There's also on the social impact. Have there been assessments that have been done and are published that we can all appraise of and probably go through?
Thank you for the question, and Kome. And as I said in the beginning, is that what we have done at the moment, we have done what is called the strategic environmental impact, strategic environmental and social assessment, CESA. This is because when you look at the MCA Act, it actually provides for every program, for every plan, for every policy, before you go towards the specific site ERA, you are supposed to do the CESA. So what we have done as an agency, we have done CESA. The specific environmental impact and social assessment will be done once the site has been confirmed. So at the moment, we have not done the EIA, but we are developing the framework. Secondly, let me come back to the first question that you asked. As I said, in 2019, we were able, by the mandate given, to establish the Kenya Nuclear Regulatory Authority. This is the authority that has been given the mandate by the Act. And if you have time, you can actually check on the Nuclear Regulatory Act of 2019, which actually encompasses that the regulator will be able now to be a comprehensive regulator to ensure that the people, the property, and the environment is protected against the harmful effects of ionizing radiation. But when you go down onto it, it talks about the issue of licensing. It talks about the issue of licensing of the nuclear plant. It talks about the issue of assessment for you now to be able now to operate the nuclear power plant. And then it talks about the issue of ensuring that safety, security, and safeguard is upheld. And that is one of them. But also, when you are in the nuclear industry, you are not in your own place. You need to accede to international obligation, international frameworks. So currently, what we have done in the nuclear security space, almost all of the instruments has been acceded to. For the nuclear safety, we are developing the accession to 4 key international instruments, which is the Convention on Nuclear Safety, the Convention on Early Notification, the Convention of Assistance in Case of a nuclear accident, and the fourth one, which is the Convention of Joint Convention. So that at the end of the day, you will be operating under the international agreed framework. Also, we are working together with NEMA, because at the end of the day, NEMA will have a say, because they are the environmental protectors, to ensure that the environment is protected. On those 2 fronts, I believe that maybe we are working towards ensuring that there is a very clear legal framework to be able now to ensure that the nuclear will be implemented according to the program and framework that has been established.
Thank you for that. I think then that aligns with the direction that we need to move. I am seeing a question from the floor here, and I will allow it because it's very early and I like your confidence. So I don't know if there's someone to pass a mic to.
My name is Lawrence Sogo. I work for a development organization called Center for Climate Change. I also lecture at Tomboya University in Homa Bay. My concern is, from your introduction of the nuclear thing, in a nutshell, maybe in one sentence, could you define what it means to a community member or a villager, so that they, in the simplest term, so that they understand? In relation to that, as a carbon policy expert, I'm interested to know from where you sit, where you work, your role, your relation with the carbon, with the nuclear. Do you think it's viable, it's the best way to go? Or should we wait for 2034? I know there are fields in carbon that if we venture, we'll be able to reap within 3 years. Can we wait for the next 10 years so that we're able to get the benefit or not? My main concern is a villager down right in the village. I suppose you also come from one of the villages. Are they able to understand what this nuclear thing is? Or do they perceive it as something dangerous that should not be ventured into? Thank you.
Great, thank you. We're going to pose the questions there so we can go around the panel.
Absolutely.
But maybe, Edwin, do you want to give that one sentence and then we'll come back to you for the second question after we go to the panel?
Okay, thank you so much, Sogo, for the question. I also find it very hard for complex issues to be defined in a single sentence, which I'll try, by the way. The nuclear power, on a very simple understanding, is like when you have a very big kettle and then you're boiling the water in it. And then at the end of the day, you get steam that can turn the turbines can turn the generator, and generator can turn and you generate electricity. So in a very simple, so this big kettle, it's called a nuclear reactor, where actually the reaction, which is called fission, takes place. It can be likened to when you are doing geothermal. Geothermal, the process, it is underground, where because of magma and the pressure outside, the water down there, because of pressure and heat and the depth of it, it comes out as heated in steam form. So you can look at the underground being this big kettle, which actually is a nuclear reactor. And the nuclear reactor, what you have in there, you have 4 things. Number one, you have a nuclear material called fuel, because it's uranium. Uranium, it is material that is found even in Kenya, but the economic viability of the same has not been quantified. So this uranium, it can be mined. And but for information, actually, the first nuclear reactor was in Africa, in a place called Gabon, 2 billion years ago, many years ago, which actually it was doing natural reaction. And it was producing, I don't know, between 10 to 15 kilowatt. So the nuclear reactor has the fuel rods. And in the fuel rods, you have the fuel pellet. The fuel pellet is a small battery. It's a small battery-like that it is inside the fuel rod. And then at the end of the day, you have a moderator. A moderator, it's always water, because water is a good absorber of neutrons. And then at the end of the day, what you just do is you initiate the fission product using a neutron. And then when the neutron comes into contact with the uranium, it splits. And when it splits, it generates some energy. And this energy used to heat the water. The water turns into steam, and then it can be able now to go towards the other aspect. The only difference between nuclear power plant and other type of electricity generation is actually this big kettle called the nuclear reactor. That's in a very simple way.
Thanks. A lot of safety concerns and public perceptions on nuclear energy has already emerged, conversations that we're having. And I want to bring the conversation to you, Dominic. Why the sudden rush to nuclear as opposed to other renewable alternatives in your perspective as an academic, as a researcher? What does research say? Why the sudden rush? And as you contemplate that question, how should Kenya address these issues while exploring this option of nuclear? Because the public perception is very anchored on the safety concerns.
Yeah, I think personally, as a citizen of Kenya, I would also be concerned if some new technology was coming close to my home. Of course, I would like to see, would my siblings be safe? Would my parents be safe? But if we look at risk, everything has a risk. Some risks can be mitigated. Some may not be mitigated. So I think the question of risk should not really deter us from exploring any resources that we have, because you have a resource. Currently, we are moving away from fossil fuels because of climate change and everything. So I think we need to be able to give ourselves space to explore all available technologies for our use, to be able to harness them. But the caveat is, this particular technology that is nuclear comes with safety risks. Then we see, okay, where have we had accidents before? Of course, we had some accidents maybe in the 50s, 60s, but have we had a recent accident due to nuclear energy? Maybe yes, maybe not, but at what percentage? Because, so I think the question should not be, do we have risks? Should we fear this because of the risks? It should be more of, can the risks be mitigated? And I think the government is doing a good job because we already have CESA that has been done. We have a nuclear regulatory authority. We also have a nuclear safety authority. And for everyone's information, nuclear energy is one energy that is very heavily regulated. And that's why even the question of why do we have to wait until 2034, it's because you have a long lead time between the time you decide we have to explore nuclear to the time you'll actually develop that plant. As you can see, it's been already 10 years to 14 years since Kenya started exploring this nuclear thing, but we've not yet even done one nuclear site because you have to look at those risks before. You have to see, okay, which is the best site? How best can we maybe deal with the waste and everything that is associated with that. As far as the sudden rush to exploring nuclear energy, I don't know what rush is to all of us. I don't know if 10 years is a rush. Is 5 years a rush? Is 2 years a rush? Because if we are looking at the first power plant in around 2034, that's already 10 years from now. 10 years ago, I was in fourth year in campus. Yeah, 10 years ago, I was fourth year in campus. So much has happened between then. I've graduated, had jobs, a few number of jobs, and it's been a whole decade. And a lot has changed. So I feel like there is no sudden rush. It is what the options. It's everyone looking at the options, because from an energy modeler's perspective, you ask yourself, so we project, as you said, we have the least cost power development plan. So we are projecting that our demand will be this much by this time. And then you ask yourself, what options do we have? So we have nuclear here, we have geothermal here, we have solar here, we have, name them, of course, and we have coal. So, but everyone is facing away from coal. So you ask yourself, so what do we look at the viability? Do we look at all those things that people consider before doing a power plant? Because power plants are very expensive to construct. They need it's a capital intensive exercise. And if you don't do it right, power will become expensive. Power is not like tomatoes, where if you have so much of tomatoes, the price will go down. In the energy sector, if you have so much power, someone has to recoup their investment somehow. So you have to pay some cost for availability of that power. So a lot goes into consideration before settling on a technology. And so much is discussed. And the thing about nuclear is it's overly regulated, and we should not throw, the baby with the bathwater. I think we should be able to look at what options do we have. If we have a better option, okay, let's not do nuclear. But if nuclear is a good option and safety is a problem, okay, let's mitigate safety issues. I think that is the best way to go where I sit. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those remarks from a research perspective, because I see you've tried to cover all bases, including on the economics side of it, and if it is actually a viable thing as compared to other alternatives that are already existing. And probably, if I am to ask you, Leo, there are other alternatives, sources. And for example, I know part of Vision 2030, the same sort of like realization that brought us to nuclear as an option, there was also somehow an expansion to a source that we as Kenyans, our president and everyone actually is very proud of as a clean renewable, that is hydro. So High Grand Falls Dam, that is one of the flagship projects actually for the Vision 2030, and it was to add on a similar amount in terms of energy output. That's 1,000 megawatts. And clearly, it is almost the same in terms of the cost of setting that up. So my question to you would be, do you think we should pursue nuclear first, or try and expand our hydro generating power?
Yes, thank you. And so, as an economist, we have a very peculiar way of thinking through such issues. And just to reiterate, the problems in an energy mix are largely economic related. And the reason why a good friend from the nuclear agency have not made significant progress is, one of them is the cost factor. That requires close to, I think the last estimate I saw is something like $5 billion. And $5 billion would be a big project on that scale. The big issue that is nuclear energy cost effective in the long run? It is. Is it better than the other options? Yes, it is. But there are trade-offs. So you trade off. So there's a question that has come from the audience. One of them is on emissions. Yes, there are direct emissions, it's emission free, but the other indirect emissions, the problems related with the indirect emissions, including now the uranium enrichment and the others, and which, when that question was being asked, I could see my colleague, she was nodding and in disapproval. So you can easily see that there are those. So there's a case for nuclear. The problem is, just like the geothermal and others, there is a cost component that it's bigger to shoulder. There are cost overruns related to heat, what Dominic you spoke to, and that's a challenge. So nuclear, for Kenya, for me, the way I define it is, the faster that Kenya attains a middle income status, a proper upper middle income status, $14,000, $15,000, it would be easier to do nuclear power plants. But at current state, just getting, you all see in the newspapers how tighter it is. And this is after, if you look at Kenya's energy mix, the energy, what was added is geothermal, part of it was geothermal, hydro, and others. And you can easily see the strain. Part of those loans that we pay to those multilateral and bilateral lenders are related to this kind of. So that's where the challenge is. It's more of an economic problem. Countries that have gone to, if you see that list, people who are already on advanced stages of building nuclear power plants. Most of those countries are always top 20 advanced economies, and those countries that are in upper middle income. Very few LDCs, which Kenya is part of, make into that cluster. So we all need to be cognizant that unless a faster push for economic growth, we start to see that structural transformation from now lighter industries to that full manufacturing that will be able to satisfy that demand. That's a problem. So let me add a rider to it. You've spoken about the Vision 2030. The Vision 2030, in the original part, it was just the economic plan, which was like, what are the Kenya's economic aspirations and where they need to be. Then, in the subsequent part, what they added in that think tank that was convened by the Ministry of Planning was the flagships. And you easily see, if you take the time the flagship started and the borrowing plans, you can correlate Kenya's debt problem to those flagships. So the question, and why the technology is right, the risks are few. I need to emphasize that one. The economics is right. What is not present is that economic, Kenya being an economic powerhouse, to be able to put that in plan. So for us, we are not like, it's not the last one. People who work in think tanks, you can speak and speak until the end. But the last one, if you look at what Germany did, Kenya is not like the case of Germany, where we are choosing one side or the other. In 2000, in the 90s and early 2000s, Germany had a bigger pool of nuclear power plants, which they closed, and they reversed and went back to fossils. For us, we are not on that path. Already, the part of the electricity problem, the larger part of electricity is already renewable. But the bigger problem is, if you look at the bigger energy supply, is the other part of what is consumed is still biomass. And that is what we need to solve. Would people be able to, the desired demand is we all need to go to that part of where nuclear is. But can these incomes that Kenyans have now be able to support that? I don't think so. And that's where the problem. So it's an economic, it's what is beating the nuclear argument in Kenya is largely an economic problem. It's not even on the environment or whether the engineering part or not. That's why something like green hydrogen is now becoming a better alternative than the nuclear because of these planning costs and all these other old manner of things. Thank you. I think I've gone.
No, you've been very elaborate in your response, and I think also what you've clearly mentioned is that our position as a country, as an LDC, we're basically not yet ready for it, and which goes back to what Solo was saying, that probably we require a moratorium of sorts before we say now we're at the position economically to jump onto this bandwagon and join the rest of the world. It's clear you've mentioned something also about Germany. This is a very developed country, well, quite developed, and they're moving away from nuclear. And I would be keen to understand why. And basically, Faith, you come from, you represent the grassroots in this room as a human rights expert. And I would want to pose that question for you, because as a Kenyan in Kilifi, do they think that this is a solution for them? It might, yes, be a low carbon solution, but the cost implication might be too high for their impoverished counties. And what probably might be your outlook from a Kenyan perspective, from a grassroots perspective?
First of all, I'd like to refrain from referring myself as a grassroots person, because their lived experiences is very different from mine. After this, I'm going home to my TV and watching. So there's a bit of a difference. But from what I've gathered and from the people I've had conversations with based in Kilifi, they have a lot of concerns. And these are not concerns that you can just brush off as them not understanding what's happening or the end justifies the means. It's around people's livelihoods that's at stake. It's around people's health that's at stake. That's how they view it. It's about their right to make a decision on what happens on their land. Those are the questions that they are posing right now, they are asking right now. And the difficult situation that they are in right now is the fact that whenever they are raising these concerns, at least what I've seen on media, is they are met with reprisals. You hear people are getting arrested just because they are not pro-project. So those are the questions that I think we should also think about as we are thinking of an energy access, moving away from energy poverty and all those things. We cannot leave these people behind. If you're looking at when I read briefly the report, you had candidate sites. I think that's what you mentioned, Kilifi, and was it Kwale? As well. If you look at Kilifi, this is an area that has a marine ecosystem. You have mangrove, ecotourism. This is a place where they've been living like this for the longest time. Somebody coming in and telling them that we're thinking of setting up nuclear here, and then you go for a meeting, and then they ask you questions like, okay, what of compensation? And then you say, we've not decided. Okay, what of nuclear waste? We don't know yet. You know, questions like this tend to give people anxiety. Even me, if you come to my house and tell me that we want to set up a factory over there, but it's not on your house, I would start getting anxious. So I think, in short, what I'm just trying to say is issues around land acquisition have always been a problem here. Even with renewable energy, look at the case of Lake Turkana Wind Power Project. We have communities who had not registered their lands, and they are still struggling right now. And as we speak, KenGen is also looking to have another wind power project that's going to generate 1,000, is it gigawatts or megawatts? Megawatts of, I'm not an engineer, megawatts of electricity there. We also have Suswa, we have the transmission lines. There was also issues of compensation. So land is always a very big question, and it's part of us. So when you start talking about land acquisition, we need 36 acres. Of which land, of where? Those are the questions that they are asking. When you talk about access to information, I think when I was talking to some people, they said that they really felt that was not there. Even when the strategic, environmental, and social assessment was being done, there were concerns that they're being called for validation, but they were not even involved in the process. And whenever they were raising concerns, these were brushed off, or the meeting was ended. That's what I was told. Another concern that came in was around local content and is around their livelihoods. Like some of these people are fisher folk. What happens to them? These are questions that they have. So as we continue to think about all this progress that we are going to make, let us not leave these people behind. Let us start having them in these spaces. Like, for instance, I would have really loved to have seen somebody from this area, from that area here, because I am not the best person to speak on their issues, to be present here right now. And then another thing that I also would like to raise, and this is maybe to you experts over here, and it's also similar to his question over there on nuclear. It's still a very vague conversations for most of us. We've watched movies on Chernobyl. We've watched documentaries of how things could go wrong, but we are being told that no, it's quite safe. But we are not getting like a clear explanation on what that means. What we need is information, and that is not what we are receiving. And then the last thing that I'd also like to say is I'm also not convinced that we have used up or the renewable energy that's available. At least when I've read, 46% of our energy comes from geothermal. GDC is still looking at Suswa for more geothermal. Menengai, when you look at the Menengai situation, this is a project that started in 15, 14, those years. And until today, we just have one power producer with a power plant. The others were stuck because they couldn't get money to finance the power plants that they have. So right now is when Global Lake is working, and it's when Kaishen is starting to operate. And then you're telling us, now you're giving us nuclear. Where is this money coming from? As he said, those are the questions that we also have. I'm sorry if I've talked a lot.
No, don't be sorry. It's all part of the debate and all part of the hot questions that we need to be asking. I would like to, yes, Leo?
I'd like to add something. There's something very important that she said before it gets lost. And this, I think, should be the lesson to the agency. One of the things that has happened in this country from time to time is government agencies want to show regulatory fiat, government power in executing projects and in getting things done. Just like what the member from the audience has asked is, one of the things that you notice is explain this thing in simple terms. The Constitution provides powers for government to compulsory acquire land, but on a fair basis. On the questions of safety, for me, I've read about the safety about that, and that is something for me I can explain the safety, how safe nuclear energy is, and even looking at the probability of those incidences happening. The problem is using national security grounds and using all the other grounds to get those things done is a problem that you'd end up actually collapsing and people just refusing completely. Because I'm now seeing debates that even when government is right on an issue, people are just saying that that is wrong. And that buy-in is something that is, so this is a political economy observation. Don't fall into prey in what Kenyan institutions have always done. And because that you'll never be able to resolve. And once people have decided no, that is something. So Even including, that could even mean including taking people to other places, whether it's you're taking locals to Japan to go and see nuclear power sites, sites that have been in place for the last 50 years. That's something that you can consider. But the problem you see is the normal symptom of what government institutions in Kenya behave like. That's the common disease that government institutions have. And that should be something that the Nuclear Power Agency needs to resolve.
Thank you, Leo. So many issues have already come in, but I want to pause, with your permission, Dan, obviously, for the voices on the stage to be halted for a second and for us to get some of your insights and your knowledge and the questions you might have in the audience as well. As I wait to see the hands going up, I'll assist Emily. One came in from Marco Daga, so panelists. Marco Daga wanted to know, based on what long-term planning is nuclear power being considered, and what are the reasons justifying its use, given the abundance of other renewable energy alternatives? I'm just going to give the first question here, and then the second one where Emily is.
I think my first question that I wanted to address has been addressed already, and now I'll just do a follow-up on the question whereby I was going to ask what are these challenges that you're facing in terms of introducing this new initiative and nuclear power to the public. And now that the question has been answered, my next follow-up is, how effective are you addressing the issues that has been mentioned by the young lady from the human rights space?
Hello everyone, my name is Onjolo Victor. I come from a research area, and my question is regarding the policy issue. There has been a question in terms of is there a real, is there a comprehensive law, rather regulations in place to govern nuclear power development? Given that in 2021, I was involved in a research on seed laws in Kenya, and one of the, we went to a meeting at Kenya Museums of Kenya, and the question was, farmers were not allowed to share seeds. And the political leader, or rather the government official, was out there saying, have you ever seen a farmer being arrested because there is no law about seed laws in Kenya? Then come in recently, where we are given a story of multinationals coming in. They want to trade their seeds in terms of GMO and every such a discussion. So like, for me, it's all about the policies. They are a comprehensive framework. And I would wish we would even have more of the government officials to address such an issue. Thank you so much.
So my question about this energy is about development and how we are progressing. Considering the first nuclear plant, best case scenario will come live in 2034. So currently, there are very many renewable options. Which technologies are mature enough, which we can reduce the cost and we can scale to achieve there, because if we talk to 2034, we may not get there, considering the pandemics are coming up, geopolitical tensions, also considering the health ecosystem. Yeah, how are we preparing ourselves?
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gisore Nyabuti. I'm a human rights defender. So I'd like to ask a couple of questions. Why not other renewable energies? Why not the dams? What happened to the wind? What happened to the geothermal? The other thing is, do we want to be a nuclear power country, or do we need the nuclear warheads? If we need the nuclear energy, we have the renewables. There is no need for us to go for nuclear if not yet we don't want to be a nuclear warhead country. There's an idea of nuclear waste being buried in Isiolo and Meru area in the 90s. You see now the way the people there have cancers. Do we have a solution for the waste that is coming? If the country cannot solve the waste management issue at the moment, how sure are we will solve the waste management issue of nuclear power plants? Is it the investors' money we are aiming, or do we have a solution out of it? Yes? Be clear. Is it the investors' money you are just we want to pull to our country and then squander it in between. Everyone on the panel is just speaking about the profit. No one is speaking about Mother Nature. No one is speaking about the environment. Germany itself is moving away from the nuclear. Who are we, a third world country, to come and say we want to go to nuclear? Do we have the solutions? Do we want to experience what they experienced? Can we not learn from them? Are we fools that we want to live the experience? Are we not wise to just learn from the experience? No matter any amount of money that they can be compensated for their land, it's not amount to any, it's not worth it. We have, the way the lady said, we have the marine nature there. We have the dolphins. We have never been told we have dolphins in Kenya. We have them in Kwale. We want to go and mine at Uyombo there and make a nuclear power plant, yet it will destroy every ecosystem there. Are we considering Mother Nature, or it's just for profit? Are we capitalists in our minds that we want to exist everything and we milk everything just for profit? What has entered in our heads? Don't we have hearts? Don't we have consciousness? We need to be conscious.
Jambo, kwa majina naitwa Judy, ninatoka Nairobi. Swali langu ni, huko Kilifi mnataka kuweka nuclear power plant, ilhali hakuna stima. How is it possible? You want to set up a nuclear power plant, yet some homesteads, starting from Mavueni to Shakahola, there's no power. Homesteads are suffering. There's a lot of sun that is in Kilifi, yet we are not exploring it. We are not exploring renewable energy, and we want to explore nuclear energy. How are we okay upstairs? Sorry.
Hello, I'm Lulu. I'm an energy and environmental engineer, and I would like to pose questions and also maybe give insights. So I think, hearing from what a lot of people are saying, I think I'll say that education is very compulsory, because I feel like what the government is trying to put across and what people on the ground have is very different. Because, for example, in terms of, I've had somebody giving an issue about electricity access in Kilifi. So I'll say, for example, I worked with Ketraco some time back. There's supposed to be a transmission line that's supposed to cross there. But then again, obviously, there's been a problem with money. So, and then not like all places in Kilifi don't have electricity, just some few places. And then the thing about people insisting on having solar. Okay, solar is abundant. But then you see with solar comes batteries, comes inverters. That is going to be a cost that the consumer gets to bear. But if you're to compare nuclear, which, for example, I think the plant is supposed to have 900 megawatts, which is going to be each 300. The question should be, it started in 2010. Along the line, one of the reasons why it took a lot of 10 years is that they were trying to look for locations. Obviously, in terms of some places couldn't be along the Rift Valley because of tensions, in terms of how the Rift Valley is. And then also another place, it was supposed to be in Lake Victoria, but then it opened because of the population. And now they ended up settling in Kilifi, which is at least sparsely populated, not very densely populated compared to some areas. So I feel like for the new pair, there needs to be a lot of civic education, literally, because I feel like Kenyans want the best, but then if you as the government can't communicate to the common people, common mananchi, and if you are to look at us, who we are learned, some of us don't have a grasp of it. What about somebody who's ule mtu wa huko chini, when they don't know anything totally about nuclear? Another thing too, I will pose a question is, there's supposed to be 900 megawatts, but then between 2024 and 2034, obviously the supply of Kenya will have increased. And you're talking about having the SGR to be an electric line. And I think the reason was because you are aiming to increase the supply so that when now the demand comes, you also increase the demand. So there was a possibility of it being more than 900 megawatts, right? So now what happens if you get to 2034 and then now the supply has increased? Then does it mean that now we have to look at another 20, 30 years of going back to the plan, increasing the demand to meet maybe by then the demand will have already increased? Yes, so that is my question. Yes, thank you.
Great, and just to add on to that question, there's another question that came in from the registration form. And the question was to the academia in the country, what role do Kenyan universities and research institutions have in providing education that gives the full picture of the pros and cons of nuclear energy developments in Kenya, and how can we build local expertise? So I think we'll close this round and then give the conversation back to the panel and then back to the audience. Do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to really thank each and every person who has been able now to really ask for a question. And I think the first person was, who asked the question was Fred. Fred, you had 7 questions. Yeah, there are several questions that actually has come on board. And I think one thing I want also to take it up from where Lulu left it. I believe that actually the most important thing about the nuclear is about civil education, because ignorance. There is this one of the Nobel Prize winner, Marie Curie, who said that actually in life, nothing is to be feared. Everything is to be understood. When we understand, we fear less. And that is exactly what I want us to do this afternoon. We might not actually be able now to understand the nuclear power in its entirety, but I think it is important for us to have a grasp of the same. And my friend Dominic, when he was giving his speech, he said, do we have accident that has happened? And the most important thing about the nuclear industry is because where it started. And my friend Ogutu actually asked a question that, do we want nuclear warheads or do we want nuclear for power generation? That's the reason where when the nuclear industry began, it began on a very wrong footing. And many people say there is no second chance to bring first impression. The first impression is everything that you need. But with education, with awareness, I believe that maybe we can be able now to understand. Because what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945 is actually haunting the nuclear industry. And when you look at what happened in 1945, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and what happened in 1957, where the international community came together and they said, and I want to repeat these words, that nuclear will no longer be used for harmful purposes, but for peaceful purposes. And that is when the International Atomic Energy Agency was formed with this motto, atoms for peace. And Kenya is a signatory of the treaty, which is called the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And this treaty, in essence, has 2 parts, the nuclear weapon states and the non-nuclear weapon states. Kenya is one of a non-nuclear weapon state. And in the treaty, it says categorically that the non-nuclear weapon states will not in any way desire to develop nuclear weapons. And that is it. And each and every year, on the 26th of September, we have what is called the Nuclear Disarmament Day, where each and every country pledges to be able now to disarm on nuclear warheads that they have, and usually celebrated during the United Nations General Assembly. Now, coming to the aspect that we have been asked, how safe is a nuclear plant? And as I said, is that actually there have been a lot of development into the technological, and I agree with my friend Leo, that actually nuclear technology, in terms of technological aspect, it has been proven. And when you want to Google, by the way, you can Google the World accident index, you will realize actually nuclear is not even in top 10. Nuclear, in terms of the accident, from the time it started up to now, it cannot be compared with any other type of energy because it is the safest. Why? Because of these three things. Number one, a nuclear power plant or a nuclear reactor has what is called 5 layers of defense. The only time that the nuclear will be a problem, it is when the radioactive material has been released to the environment. And what has the engineers and the scientists done? They have been able to emasculate the nuclear fuel in such a way that the first barrier for you not to release the radioactive to the environment is to have the nuclear fuel. It is being cladded by a material called zirconium. The second one, it is being put in a fuel rod. The third one, it's being under the moderator, that is being, and the fourth one is actually being under the reactor vessel. And the last one, when you just Google nuclear power plant, you will see there is a shape type of a containment that it has been proven that it is close to impossible for that containment to be broken. And the reason why actually there has been the 3 accidents. One, it's 1979, where we had the 3 Mile Island. But in that accident, there was no release of ionizing radiation to the environment. The second one, which was the worst, and up to date, I think we are really mourning as a nuclear industry. And this is the phrase that we are having, that a nuclear accident anywhere is a nuclear accident everywhere. And that is why we came with what is called the Convention on Nuclear Convention on Nuclear Safety in 1986. The issue of nuclear safety was not there. And when you look at the reactor that was used in Chernobyl, it is called RBMK. It is no longer used anywhere in the world. In that reactor, there was no containment. In that reactor, people were allowed to do research, which was not right. But at this particular moment, nobody, and also, as we say, in a nuclear industry is a club that you cannot just go and do it, because an accident in Kenya is an accident everywhere. An accident in Japan is an accident everywhere. So, and the last accident which happened was 2011 during the Fukushima, where there was a tsunami, and anything that was on the path of tsunami was taken out. The nuclear power plant in Fukushima was one of them. But as you speak right now, there's been a lot of remediation at the end of the day. So to answer the question that has been raised, and I believe that one thing that is coming out very clearly is that this type of engagement, this type of forum is very, very important. So that at the end of the day, we can be able now to come to a consensus. Because in each and every technology, there are people who are pro, there are people who are neutral, and there are people who are against. And one thing that can be able now to bring the people who are against to or to neutrality is when they understand how this technology works. And I agree, at one time or another, maybe you might not do the right thing, but then as you continue, you're able now to correct what was wrong. So let me just come and answer the question very fastly that Judy was asking is that hakuna stima Mavue na Kilifi, and I think it has been answered. It is true. The electricity level of Kilifi is not very large, but I think the government is doing everything possible to ensure that it is electrification. And it does not mean that if they don't have electricity, you cannot bring electricity to them, or you cannot bring a technology that can be able now to help them. And then you ask also that these people are fishermen. These people are continuing with their lifestyle. I want to say that when you look at the nuclear plant which is operating, when you go to South Africa, for instance, the Gobak, it is right within a national reserve, When you go to Argentina, it is inside a marine park. So we are not saying that we are going to dismember the ecosystem of the Uyombo or of Kilifi or of our country. One thing that has been said, at the end of the day, environmental impact assessment will be undertaken, and the marine life, the ecosystem will be taken care of. At the end of the day, one of the principles that we are doing, which is very clear in our in the principle of nuclear safety, that you're not going to enjoy the nuclear power at the moment at the expense of our future generation. We need to take care of our future generation. So somebody asked the policy issue, is there a real framework? And as I said, the Kenya Nuclear Regulatory Authority, which has been established by the Nuclear Regulatory Act, has the total framework of ensuring that the regulatory framework for the nuclear power plant is taken care of. Somebody asked long-term planning and how is it being used? What are the challenges in reducing the nuclear power plant, and how effective are they addressing this one? I believe that, as we have said, there are many challenges that are there. But what we are saying, one of them is public education and awareness. People don't understand what nuclear power is. So what we are doing in our agency, we have a directorate that is actually Director of Information and Advocacy that is rolling out very intentional public engagement awareness programs. We have our regional office in Mombasa, which is gonna help in disseminating this information. So I believe that going forward, what we have learned is that we need to engage the public, both on the policy level and also on the host community. So another question that was asked, can we wait? I think it is an important aspect at the end of the day is that nuclear power plants require a long lead time. Even if we say we wait up to 2034, then are we going to wait for another 10, 20 years for us to plan? What we are doing currently, we are planning. So at the end of the day, when our demand of energy will be there, we will be able now to meet it. And one else, something we have abundant. We have not exhausted all type of our energy sources. Let me reiterate this one, ladies and gentlemen. Nuclear power is not competing with any source. Nuclear power is complementing. When you look at the African, for instance, Egypt has almost 55,000 megawatts of electricity. South Africa has almost 47,000 megawatts. When you look at Morocco, Algeria, they are in 10,000. We in Kenya, we have 3,000. How can we, and when you look at the resources that we have, when you look at geothermal, a maximum of 10,000, according to the studies. When you look at our wind, our solar, we can go as much. But I believe that we have an obligation to ensure that our future generation will not be asking, why didn't you not prepare energy access for us? Energy poverty is real. And when we are going to be able now to industrialize, we will need more of our energies. And where else can we get? Because coal right now, it's another aspect because in terms of greenhouse gas houses. When you look at the issue of geothermal, it has a cap. So, and when you're doing the modeling, you need to see how can you bring all this energy into one basket, and then you can be able now to serve the economy of our nation. And lastly, I want to say that we are working towards ensuring that all information about the nuclear power plant will be relayed to everybody. And one thing that is very important is about what are the financial or ownership or financing of this nuclear power plant. When you look, we have 3 or 4 models. Number 1 is what is called build, own, operate, and then transfer. The second one is build, own, operate. The third one, it is intergovernmental agreement. The fourth one, it is Tanki. All these are under consideration. And once there has been finalized, we believe that the country will be able now to be undertaken, to be aware of what we are doing. But this thing is being done under open. Our offices are open. You can come and we can be able to engage with you. And lastly, about the nuclear waste, it is important for us to realize that when you're building a nuclear power plant, one thing that you need to consider is the high-level waste. And that is why in the architecture of the nuclear plant, one of the mandatory places where you need to provide for, it is a place called the wet pool. The wet pool is that you do simulation of if this plant is going to generate electricity for the next 80 years, where are you going to put this nuclear fuel that has been spent? It is within the nuclear plant. And after that, there is what is called at reactor and away from reactor storage facility, where the radioactive waste or the spent fuel will be taken care of. And lastly, according to somebody say that there was burying of the radioactive waste in northern Kenya, I believe we need to be truthful. That is not true. What people say that it was the radioactive buried in the Marsabit, the northern part of the country, it is not true. And I can tell you that is not true. Thank you.
Thank you for those responses. I think you've covered most because I think most were directed to you. But I would open up if there are any responses. You go first, Dominic.
There was a question of the role of academia and research in providing education and in capacity building. So academia, and Strathmore being one of them, is we operate on a triple helix format, where you have to link academia with industry. So there's government on one end, there's industry on the other, and there's academia on the other end. So, government provides policies. Then industry does what it does. Industry, various industry players. Then academia sits in between to kind of merge the two. So the policy vis-a-vis what actually happens on the ground. So that is where we operate. And giving an example of the solar energy space, in around 2014, as Strathmore Energy Research Center the center was being formed, there were very few solar experts in the country. And Strathmore took an initiative. We built a solar power plant, a 600 kilowatt peak, that has been used as a demonstration and for teaching of solar experts. And as we speak, more than 4,000 technicians of the solar energy space have been trained at the Strathmore Energy Research Center. So that is the role we play in the emerging technologies. So solar being one of them. And as we can see right now, solar has been widely accepted, and so many people, so we have the capacity, we have the social acceptance, and then the technology is right, and everything is just right. So that is the role that universities and academia play in that space. So we envision the same for nuclear, because as we currently speak, nuclear is still under development. So what academia can do currently is just the sensitization on the policies, making sure they are right, making sure like the best practice out there is being borrowed in Kenya, and that the best people are able to do that. And also on the other aspect of modeling. So modeling what our energy system would look like with nuclear and without nuclear, knowing that the kind of resources we do have as a country. Of course, all of us would like to go for solar. All of us would like to go for geothermal, but then probably there is a cap into the total technology. So also academia plays a role to model what scenarios, what pathways exist for our country to adopt these technologies. So because at the end of the day, you have to optimize for the best in terms of one, cost, two, energy security, making sure we all have energy access, and three, making sure that the social economic perspective of the people are also taken into consideration. So that is, from where we sit as academia, we feel that is our role, and of course, even much, much more. Thank you.
I saw you.
Just let me just clarify on that, just on the capacity building, because as an agency, we are working together with the University of Nairobi. We have an institute called Institute of Nuclear Science and Technology, where we are training our scientists on master's level, and also we have the newly constructed Kenya Advanced Institute of Nuclear Science and Technology, KAIST, that is being completed at Konza, where we will be training nuclear engineers. And also, we are working closely with Kenyatta University to be able now to develop the nuclear science and nuclear engineering graduates. But that said and done, also we are working with our development partners. Currently, we are working with 5 TVETs, polytechnics, and also universities to develop the curriculum that will be able now to roll out also for the nuclear engineers, for the scientists, for the technician, and for the craftsmen, in ensuring that we build the human resource for the nuclear power plant. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. And I think from an economic perspective, probably I would come to you, Leo. And we should take a fork in the road here. Yes, we're talking about the sustainability of it all, right? We're not just looking at the total cost of ownership, but we want to also see what the Kenyans can derive from it. The local mwananchi, that has been a very interesting sentiment shared there, that most, and I have been to Kwale, most of the citizens there, local mwananchi, hawana stima kwa nyumba. And one of the things is, the reasons is the cost of this per unit, like kilowatt, if you were to buy it. And this has continued to increase from 2009, I think, on the aspect of nuclear energy, because what the figures actually point to an increase of 49%. And that can be compared to the cost of solar energy decreasing by 83%, and that of produced by the wind decreasing also by 63%. So nuclear energy seems to be becoming more expensive in terms of consumption. So how would you see that? Like, we're talking about 2034. Will that cost have come down, or are we still building castles in the air?
So, and for me, I like to talk about countries that already use nuclear at the moment. If you compare the renewable, the part that is renewable, for example, on a cost by cost basis, now comparing like for like, the only energy source that still beats nuclear is actually the biomass, the fossil, the coal. Yes. So on a cost by on a cost basis, the nuclear still has an upper cut. When you model and add now the environmental concerns, it's still cost effective in the long run. For me, and this is the point that I'd like all of us, not just as people who are interested in nuclear, but as Kenyans, to understand is there's a cost argument, cost effectiveness argument for nuclear. And part of getting the conversation started is to put those numbers for the whether it's National Treasury or the Ministry of Energy or the agency itself, to put those numbers into perspective, so that it does not become an argument of that it's not that it's not cost effective or not.
But that's the assessment you have to do, comparison.
Yes, but the assessment that I've read more papers on this, and on my own back of the envelope calculations on what we do in Kenya, it's still cost effective. It's still cost effective. Now, the only one that beats it, it's still coal. Coal is still the cheapest of all of them. But when we were doing the study, the assessment for this energy for whom, we looked at those numbers from electricity all the way to the coal. You still look at those. So there is an argument for it. What is not clear are the environmental concerns. You know, government of Kenya has in the past said they are not going to do something, and they end up doing it. And that, for me, when you spoke as a human rights defender, I share because I know, and that's the challenge that government needs to demonstrate. And it's clear. There needs to be a conversation to tell Kenyans that radioactive material is already being deployed today. It's from medicine all the way if you look at the plant, that plant in South Africa, how many, looking at those examples, to the ones that are in Japan, that are close, that are close to the coast, to waterways, to the ones, actually the similar case for Kenya, I think the Kenya and Japan, that is closer to the marine ecosystem. I think it's the Japanese,
Fukushima,
Japan. My apologies, the Japanese one. So the idea is, and this is the problem that we see with at the Institute of Economic Affairs, we see with every government, when government comes up with something. There's a trust deficit because government in the past has messed up, and that trust deficit is carrying up onto this project. So that people are asking, yes, we know that there is a waste, the nuclear waste would be emitted. Would government really take the necessary safety procedures to be able to? People are not buying into it, and that is the buying process is something that needs to happen. But on the cost part, on the cost by cost basis, if you look at their papers, and we can compare their journal papers that have gone through rigorous peer review exercise, and they've put those numbers into play. There is a case for it. So it's just the own political economy problems that we have, that we face in Kenya. How are people going to be compensated? Whether government will do what it does. And government should stop pressurizing people. Even, so for example, for somebody I've followed this project for a very long time, the Russian nuclear agency had signed an agreement with the government of Kenya, almost, I think, close to 2015. The president had gone to, so you don't know whether that agreement is still in place. All these manner of transparency questions are the ones that are driving. And when I see my friend, the human rights defender, being animated, it's not out of ignorance. You share that problem.
Yes.
So the last one that I wanted to answer. Kenya needs a diverse energy pool. And if you are here in the late 90s and early 2000s, Kenya went through severe, just like what is happening, load shedding,
South Africa.
the blackouts, what is currently happening in South Africa. So energy investment plans need to be consistent with economic numbers, But we cannot say that those plans cannot be met, because you will get to that stage, like where South Africa is now, that you have more than 8 hours, stage 6 loading. So those investment needs to be made. So for me, that's why I don't want to answer the other questions around policy, because that is something Kenyans would like to see answered by government officers.
Yeah,
but from what we know, as people work in, as somebody works in a think tank and somebody who has read enough to be able to comment about this question about the cost effectiveness of energy, of nuclear power, that that argument is still in place.
So, and just to clarify, because you started off by pointing out that Kenya is not at the economic par excellence position to take on. So I hope you're not contradicting yourself.
I'm not contradicting myself.
Great.
Because one of the things, so this is the economic argument I want to people to understand. Kenya is in that stage of what we call a debt distress. You all know about this. At present, that the transmission line, somebody spoke about the cost. That Ketraco transmission line that needs to go across the country is, in fact, a necessary thing a necessary investment that should have been made between 6 to 10 years ago. But it's not there.
Yeah.
So, but government is not able to do it at present because of the debt distress. Close to 70% of all revenues collected is going back to pay interest payments. So that is what I'm saying is there is no fiscal space at the moment to be able to do that. The nuclear power plant, and that's why it's closer to if you see the planning stage 2034, if things go right for Kenya and there is an economic growth burst, that debt resolution might be actually around that time.
Which goes back to what he was saying as a human rights defender.
Yes.
What he actually said is, are we just seeing the financing that is coming? Because it is obvious by this point that Kenya cannot embark on this to be able to finance such a project. So he's cited the fact that there's this $4 billion that's looming around. Of course, we're not going to be able to raise it, so we're going to seek alternative. Of course, that is borrowing. I mean, and maybe to take this to a different perspective, Pasi, if we can, from a human, that is anthropocentric position, try and move away from this anticipation of Kenyans' needs and to take on a more participatory one. Because if you go down to Kilifi and Kwale and ask them, did you sign up for this, or did you want nuclear energy as a solution?
Yes. So let me answer that.
They will say, no, that's what you said, right?
Yes. So let me answer that. We need to separate two things. First, our government handles
sorry, Leo, I would want to move away from the political.
Yes. That's why I'm saying we need to separate that.
Yeah.
Because if Kenya goes solar power plants, there's an engineer here. If you go the solar power plant way, it still be more expensive. It on a cost on now on the consumer side, on the demand side, on the supply side, the cost might look relatively cheaper, but that borrowing will also take place. But those on the demand side, because you see, if you've looked at your bill, you pay for all those levies, and you pay for all what was borrowed to be able to put up our power plant. So on the demand side, if you go the solar way, those costs would still be high.
As compared to nuclear?
Not to nuclear per se, but so for example, if you pay close to 1 cent per dollar on nuclear as a consumer, and pay more on the solar side, you are not looking, you need to reconcile on both sides, because one side, it will when government borrows, it goes directly to your taxes. So you'll end up raising taxes on the other side. The point I'm making is this.
Yeah.
On a cost basis, the production of nuclear,
yes,
in the long run, is cost effective. And the thing that beats nuclear, that beats nuclear, is coal.
So that's long term.
On a long run basis, yes.
On a long term.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, and
just
I'm
a
sorry
moment,
for
because I
interjecting.
want to answer the question that if you compare all these the sources.
Energy sources, yes.
It's difficult to justify an investment of $5 billion in the current state.
Yes.
And that's an argument that I started with. But on a cost basis, on a cost basis, nuclear is cheaper to produce in the long run. And that is not the same to what was produced from geothermal and the other sources. If you look at those numbers, it's still be more expensive to do them.
Okay, and from a research perspective, just to allow Dominic here to land back on that, I've just pointed out statistics. You've said numbers, and I've pointed out that the cost of solar and the cost of wind has gone down drastically as compared to the 49%. That's 50% increase from 2009 to 2024. So that a megawatt hour of nuclear energy has increased from $123 to $182. So when he speaks about the long-term cost effectiveness of this, it's clear if you look at the numbers, it is clearly not cost effective. So from your point as a researcher, I don't know if you've seen a case where nuclear has actually been cost effective from production to the demand side, as he's pointing.
Energy is it's a monster. It's one of those things that is very difficult to really decipher, because as I even mentioned earlier, you need supply, demand, you need to balance, but then when the supply overruns the demand, unlike the normal situation whereby, as if you have a lot of tomatoes in the market, the price of tomatoes will come down, right? In the energy space, if you have a lot of it, you actually incur more because of its cost. Someone has to recoup their cost. So that is like a sunken, an investment that is not yielding. So on the same, I hope I can land with this. I want now to maybe explain that. Like on a cost by cost basis, so there are three ways of probably deploying solar. There is the grid-tied version, which is the cheapest. By grid-tied, it means you have the grid, and then you have solar, and then they co-work, and that is what is currently, that is the major installation of solar in the country. There is this where there's the hybrid, and also there is now the standalone, where, for instance, personally in my rural home, electricity has not arrived, so we use solar. So when you see the cost of a standalone solar, where you have a solar and a battery, the cost is quite high.
Yeah, an average of 260,000.
It's a lot of money, yes. And probably sometimes, given that there's something also called capacity factor or availability factor, where solar is only available for a maximum of 8 hours. 8 hours, right? Mm-hmm. But in an economy, the economy runs 24 hours. So there's something they call base load. That is the minimum. That is the load that is there always in a grid that has to be satisfied by some technology. So if you have to use a technology like solar exclusively, then you realize that you'll have to have batteries to run for the 24 minus 8 is 16 hours. And batteries are very expensive. I think that is one thing to see. So what essentially grid planners normally do is you work on an energy mix. So there is no one fits all solution. Like you cannot have a grid that is 100% solar. You cannot have a grid that is 100% coal. You cannot have a grid that is 100% geothermal, because even if we had geothermal, which is still good, it's available 90% of the time. The problem is it cannot match. There's what we call load matching, because you have to match the load and the supply at the same time. Otherwise, you'll have a national blackout. So it's quite complicated, but what people need is to have an energy mix that overall, this one has these pros and cons, this one has its pros and cons. So overall, all of them are cost optimal. Yes, because someone here says that we don't need to plan, we don't need to anticipate people's needs. But assuming tomorrow, next year, we realize that we no longer have power because someone did not plan for it in 2010, will you be happy? Because life won't happen. Like, it's impossible to imagine life without electricity. Even sitting in this room, I have a mic, we have a screen, like all of it is powered by energy. So all these has to be planned for. That's something we need to agree. Power planning is important, and power planning is expensive. And you have to do it before the fact. Because, if technology takes, even solar, if you have to deploy solar, it takes like almost 2 to 3 years. And you have to reach the financial close, as economists say, or financials say. So if you are to do a project in 2025, probably they started discussing it in 2018. And if you are to do probably a nuclear one in 2034, probably you have to start discussing it in 2010. So in that perspective, these technologies, as my colleague here rightfully mentioned, they are not competing against each other. Because ultimately, what we want as a country is, there's what we call energy trilemma. There's energy, there's sustainability, energy security, and energy cost. All these are pulling in different directions. But you have to arrive at a sweet middle where you still have energy security. Energy security means you have energy that is satisfactory to satisfy your needs, probably to the future. And then you have the cost aspect. So you're looking at which is the best cost at which to supply this energy to people. And also there's a sustainability aspect, whereby we need to see whatever technologies we are using, they're not detrimental to our future. Because we don't want to have energy now that our children will not have energy, or there will be no country to live in the next 50 years.
That's foresight.
So that is, and that is a balance that needs to be had, and that is where we need to defer now to. That's where specialists come in. And one thing, because I've worked with specialists in this country, Kenya has one of the best people, Kenya has one of the best experts in most spaces. Even I have a colleague who recently went to some other country to help with some other work, because the quality of work we do is quite good. So we need to trust the experts, but also these experts need to speak the language of the people.
Contextualize the conversation. And this is the civic education Lulu was mentioning, to move people away from these notions that, are somehow becoming a force of resistance to this change.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I mean, because just to conclude is, it's not like, personally, I am pro-nuclear or anti-nuclear. From a researcher point of view what problems do we have? What solutions do we have to these problems? And then how can we have the solutions to our problems? How can we best address them? So is nuclear one of the solutions? Is it the best solution?
I get it.
That is being answered. And I think that is the question we need to answer. Thank you.
I think
so. It's not one against the other.
Yeah.
It's for an energy mix, an energy pool that actually that can actually support this economy, and especially
Economic
the needs.
development.
As an engineer, he'll tell you that some certain industries, you might, for example, like wind, not wind,
Solar.
like solar, but you cannot apply that certain especially those steel and the others. So it's just to keep a system that complements each other without necessarily choosing one or for the other.
Which I think is what Dominic said. In his rural home, you have solar, right?
Yes.
So maybe Pasi?
Yeah, I want Faith to contribute to that round.
Okay.
So we're also live streaming on YouTube, and we're also on Zoom, and
Yep.
there's a lot of comments coming in. People are saying the conversation has become too technical, and we are therefore losing the human aspect of the conversation. So the technical is important, the economics is important, the environmental is important, but there is a sentiment that we are not looking at the human aspect. I've seen a comment coming through YouTube where people are saying 5 billion USD is the projected
estimated
cost. That money, why can't we use it to ensure that those who do not have electricity in different parts of Kilifi and Kwale are connected? Why not invest in increasing people's access to electricity rather than developing a new nuclear plant? That is a question that has come in, or a comment that has come in through YouTube. There's also sentiments that we're not fully grasping the different elements of the issues. There is concerns about when and how do we include the mwananchi on the table to make decisions. There's been a question on how is government, NUPER, actively working towards ensuring that there's participatory involvement in the decision making and not just
anticipation.
We are doing nuclear and that's it. And another sentiment I saw when I was scrolling through what's coming through online is, Edwin, this was for you. Someone from Kilifi actually said that she's heard you say that the government is doing everything it can to ensure that those people without access to electricity have electricity. She wants to know what exactly is the government doing. So as you ponder upon those questions that are coming through the live stream, Faith, I want to give you maybe a minute or two to just share your thoughts, and then we'll do another round of questions.
I even think like the questions were related to what I was going to say, because I was just hearing a lot of finance, a lot of economics, and a lot of question on energy and electricity. But I was still remaining with the question of what happens to these people in Kilifi. Like, yes, now we have energy access for 10 plus years, but somebody has been displaced. And most of the times what we see, like from compensation and from relocation, it's never the same. Like, you lose more than what you gain. So we are really not hearing this bit of the conversation. And that's why I'm still saying that I am not convinced that you've justified the need for nuclear energy at this point, because for me, the risk feels more than the reward where I'm seated at. It feels like we are going to lose more than what we are going to gain. And even before we see the gains, it's 2034. Like, that's one thing that I really think you need to make sure that we understand, because at this point, I'm not seeing it. And I think that was the same assessment that was given when you submitted the CISA report to the Netherlands Commission for Environmental Assessment. I think they mentioned that the cost and benefit analysis was not being visible. We couldn't see it there. Another issue that they raised was the stakeholder engagement. Like, it was not there. I know we are saying, and that's why I understand what he's saying. Like, it's very common for the government to say that we have committees now, we are calling people for consultations, we are doing validations, but in real sense, you're ticking boxes. And we've seen it in renewable energy, where you have consultation for 2 projects on one day. So, like, we are trying to understand what you're telling us, that this is going to bring, this is different. We are going to have changes made. I think that's what I'm getting, and that's the thing I'm still not getting from Nupea. And then the last thing that I also wanted to get from you was, you've said you're moving to the milestone approach level 2, the preparation stage, right? And for the conclusion of the first stage, which is the consideration on whether we need a nuclear program. So are you done with the, and this is from a perspective of a layman, are you done with the CESA, or are you going to take the recommendations that you are given, which also included issues to do with the site, the selection of the site? They said that the baseline evaluation was from a long time ago. So what does that mean? They said that you are not considering whether there was indigenous communities in that region. Is that the case? Are we looking at FPIC having been missed out? Those are the issues that we also need addressed here. Not just cost, the energy in the long term is better than. I want to know, like, what happens to these people, and I think the people in the audience want to know the same thing.
Yeah. So as I wait to see who has comments or questions from the audience, we'll come back to the panel because we're running out of time, and Daystar is like, we might need to leave this venue soon. I see your hands. For you, Dominic, another viewer, I've forgotten the name, was very concerned about the role of academia in informing and educating. Strathmore Research Center has a very huge role in equipping the next generation of citizens with the necessary knowledge on not just nuclear, but every other developments that we have. Daystar, where we are currently being hosted, academia has a strength that I don't think they utilize a lot. And we can say that about other sectors as well, media, I mean. So a question for you when we come back. There was a question from Dauphin.
Well, I feel like this has been a crash course on nuclear energy and energy in general. You know, as an artist, for me, this is like really good fodder, you know, for creating going forwards, you know, because I think part of making this conversation palatable to people is artists have a big role to play in that aspect. But I hate to use this phrase, but this is Kenya, you know, right? This is Kenya, and the one thing that cuts across government institutions is the negligence, you know, right? And now here we're talking about nuclear energy, and for me, nuclear is not even so much about how many risks there are. It's how devastating the little, small risks that are there can be, right? Because when we talk about Chernobyl, it might be one instance in the last 3 decades or so, but
these impacts are still there today.
You know, but the question about it is that Chernobyl is still not habitable, right? Since '86, and then you know, the projections are, you know, they are going to be done with cleaning up by '65. You know, that's almost a century after. You know, so and it's the costliest, you know, like disaster in human history. That's another. So we can speak about the viability economically, but if we're going to get to that point, and then if the actual disaster actually happens, which is highly likely for Kenya, you know, there's enough disasters to go around, you know, if we are still relying on the same government to do the implementation, right? For me, that's not a far-fetched possibility at all, right? And clearly, even with the 2010 Constitution, it's not enough to have a policy paper, right? It's not enough to have documents, you know, that stipulate these are the guidelines, right? Because there's still a question of implementation. There's still a question of reinforcement, which we're still struggling. We're still having arguments about how the 2010 Constitution should be implemented, you know, of a decade after, right? This is a constitution. Before we start going into now like very niche conversations like nuclear, right? So for me, I think that the general negligence around government institutions is a big concern going forward, outside of now the human rights concerns and the environmental concerns around it, which are very vital, especially now that we're still talking about, the climate change and the imminent disaster that it is. So
negligence.
Great. As we go to the next question, thanks, Dauphin. Cautious. I was told to say, as we are airing comments and opinions, let us try and use respectful language.
Mm-hmm.
Just a note, I'm not saying that anyone did yet. Did not.
Thank you. My name is Hope Okuthe, and I work with the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. I have some concerns. I agree with Faith and some of the other people who have said that we are a little bit detached from reality. We are addressing costs of putting up the plant, but we are not looking at the ultimate cost to the consumer. Yes, we talk about Kenya being, generating 90% of electricity using renewable energy, but how many have access? I've heard somebody talking about, power being essential in your life and all that. Yes, for us, maybe in urban areas, we have access to electricity, but there are those who do not have the basic electricity, even a bulb to light. And then there are those whom, we know there was a last mile project. Yes, you're connected, but are you able to sustain the monthly cost of electricity? So we are hearing talks about the future scenarios, the cost of the plant, but what is the effect to the cost of electricity? Considering the cost of electricity in Kenya is relatively high compared to other countries in the region.
And it keeps increasing.
It keeps increasing. So what future is there? Then another thing is we are currently generating excess electricity. We are generating excess electricity, that is there. So, okay, I see someone nodding and saying no, but that is the reality compared to the demand. The supply is more than the demand, which is something that needs to be addressed because we have interacted with people whom, we try and encourage, like, come and invest, renewable energy, but they say, no, demand is not enough. We are not stirring up demand. So how are we going to address these issues even as we look at nuclear? And then nuclear plants, we read, okay, let me talk of myself. I read about the vulnerability to water stress or warming of rivers and rising temperatures. And then even in the news, we've seen some of the reactors in Germany and France shut down because of heat waves. Mm-hmm. So what measures are there, or what measures are we taking to come up with such scenarios? But we appreciate that we need an energy mix. Considering climate change, we can't rely on hydropower and all others. We need other sources. But what is there? What plans are there? And how will it, for me, I want to know, will the cost of electricity go down?
Okay, hello everyone. I am Lesarke. I am a master's student at the Faculty of Law, University of Nairobi. I'm pursuing a master's program on environmental governance, and my key focus is on rights. And so I'm relating with the people who are raising issues of rights in the room. I'm focusing on rights of 3 vulnerable groups: the rights of children, the rights of women, and the rights of nature. And so when we are having the conversation here, previously the sister has mentioned about stakeholder engagement, especially when our representative from government is speaking about, is being questioned about how much they are involving stakeholders when they are doing the whole issue of assessments. My background is on environmental science, and so I understand the very important need of assessments during projects. And so my question is, as they do stakeholder engagements, how specific are they in the engagements, considering the rights of women are not the rights of children, and the rights of children are not the rights of youths, and the rights of youth are not the rights of men? And all this I'm asking in the aspects of environmental governance. And in law, they say there is no divisibility of rights. An infringement of one right is the infringement of another right. So how specific are you as you do the assessments? How engaging or accepting are you to receive inputs from children, as non-important as they look? Because we say children are the current generation and also as the future generations. How much are we involving them in this conversation? Thank you.
There's a gentleman at the back with the mic already. Go for it.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Almasi is my name. I'm from Kilifi County. No question, but I needed to contribute to Faith's brilliant discussion. If I may, let me paint a picture of Uyombo in Kilifi County so that you understand where the people of Kilifi County are coming from. Number one, Uyombo is one of the largest fish landing sites in Kilifi County. A landing site is like a small port where the fishermen dock their boats, go fishing, come back, okay? And at the landing site, we have the cold storage, which is solar powered. We have an ice making plant there, which is solar powered, managed by the beach management unit. Just to make you understand the diverse stakeholders affected when it comes to livelihoods. A beach management unit is made of fishermen. We have the fishmongers who are the mama samakis, okay? We have the boat makers. Basically, the whole value chain from production to the market. So it's a whole range of stakeholders being affected here. And just basically, what does livelihood mean to us in Kilifi County? Number one, when you look at education, okay, we've seen what dropping out of school has done to us. We have juvenile gangs rising in Kilifi County. We have crazy rising levels of teenage pregnancy. I'm not going to get deeper and deeper today. Let's look at health, for instance. The nutritional benefits that come from the fish, yeah? Children under 5, talk of elderly people, talk of expectant mothers, and all that. The other thing, ecotourism. In Kilifi County, our tourism sector has been diminishing in the last 15 years, okay? We were highly dependent on Italian investors who, due to economic stresses on their side, they have withdrawn. So we are now looking into local tourism, and what we are banking on is ecotourism. We have the Mida Creek, which is slowly expanding into Uyombo. We have thousands and thousands of bird species that we have our local Kenyans coming to the coast, especially during Sherehe, you know. We have very beautiful boardwalks there and all that. I can imagine losing all that. Number two, another thing is that Uyombo is a breeding site for turtle, okay? Something that we are not ready to lose. Another thing, talking of the fishermen, already the fishing industry has been affected by climate change. Right now, you have to go beyond 3 nautical miles to fish. Our fishermen do not have, most of them do not have modern vessels and fishing gears that can be able to do that. So how have they adapted? When you go there, you will see cages. We have crab farming. Lobster is also coming up, which is really fetching a good price, a market price of around 2,500 to 3,500 per kg, okay? What happens when you lose that? So these are the things we're really looking at. Conservationists have identified Uyombo as one of the places where mangrove farming can really thrive. But the mangrove cannot be planted anywhere across the coast. It does not thrive just anywhere. Uyombo is one of the places. And given the potential of mangrove towards climate adaptation and mitigation, and also it's going to be a breeding site for more fish varieties, and it's also going to be a source of livelihoods creation and all that. So it's really crazy. It's really affecting us socioeconomically when you try to look at it holistically. Mm-hmm. So look at our climate action efforts that you're making. And given that right now, as per the outcomes of COP29, we've run short of climate financing. So that means you are going to do a lot of bootstrapping. So if you are going to strangle some of our efforts towards climate adaptation and mitigation. So I wish I would say more, but when the people of Kilifi County are rejecting the proposed nuclear site there, it comes from a lot of things that we really need to understand. Thank you.
Thanks.
So thank you so much. I'm Prudence Lihabi from Youth for Sustainable Energy. So just for me, it's more of a comment, and just to let everyone start thinking. As you're talking about the human rights, you're talking about engaging the community. But in Kenya, do we have a proper framework in terms of engaging the community? Just like the way we had the Rigiji impeachment, we had a group that was engaged, but was it fully engaged? Like, to what extent do we want to be engaged? And then who are the people to be engaged? And then afterwards they have been engaged, how do we want their inputs incorporated in some of the development plans that we are seeing? But until we have something that is fully structured in terms of engagement, and also the compensation, it means no matter how many meetings we have, how many talks we are going to do, nothing is going to be done until we get to that level that we're saying the constitution should be very clear in terms of engagement, the level of engagement, and also in terms of the feedback and incorporation of some of the things that we are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Prudence. Vicky, take it away.
There's a gentleman you're passing by. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Vicky Rajoro. I'm from Interreligious Council of Kenya Youth. Okay, I would like to air my voice first. In terms of, I believe Kenya we have good policies, whereby I can just urge the stakeholders who are under climate change fraternity, whereby our policies are good. You find that some countries like Rwanda are buying our own policies, and ourselves we have not even implemented. At what point do you put the government as, you are like watchdogs? At what point do you take the initiative to at least, I will say, monitor what is happening? Because our policy, we have nice policies. Please, as the stakeholders, let's work and soldier on. I believe you can make this happen. Thank you.
Jambo. Naitwa Okola, natoka Zamazama Mtaani Community Organizing Hub pale mashinani. Swali ya kwanza, agenda hii ni nani anaisukuma? Is it us, ama there is that specific person ama specific entity who's also not even within our country, like who's going to benefit more? Is it us ama watu wengine? Then kuna moment ambao mulitaja academia na muliongelea University of Nairobi. So this is the question. We have the UON towers, and we have engineers in that faculty and everything else. Hawakuwahi kuwa included kwa kufanya hiyo kazi. Sasa kwa hizi miaka zote, watu ambao tumewapeleka skuli kusomea hizi maneno za energy and everything else, do you want to tell us that we can't manufacture things on our own, that bado tutaongelea mambo na expense? Ama kuna vile we are going to, tunaenda kuchukua watu wengine kutoka ngambo watusaidie kufanya vitu ambazo tumelipia rasilimali ili tujue kujifanyia?
Hi, my name is Kevin Rotich from Kenyatta University. I'm an environmental scientist. I would like to ask the government expert two direct questions. When is the commissioning phase of the project set to begin? And there is something called a phase of plan. When will the phase of begin? And phase of will take more, like it takes like 50 years. Do you have a plan, or are we seeing our future generations again coming and suffering from the storage of nuclear waste, from the consequences that will result from the development of the nuclear project?
Good evening. I'm Flavia Nwanzala from Justice, Peace and Integrity of Creation, Franciscan Africa. We deal with the local community government. Actually, you say that the geothermal is capable of producing 10,000, but currently it's producing 3,000. You are from the government. This is the same people that are dealing with geothermal. What's the assurance you are giving us that the nuclear power will be more sufficient than whatever we have now? That's what I'll say. And another thing I'll just add about solar. Solar, they're giving us opportunities. Despite, I know it's expensive, but we're giving, these people in the local community are given even in loans that someone can pay in a day 50 bob and able to utilize it. So what will nuclear power do to ensure that actually these people will benefit? Because what I'm hearing from you people, the only thing you are thinking about is businesses. You're not thinking about the local people. How are they going to benefit from it? So thank you.
You're radioactive.
Hi. Okay. Mine is just a compliment. It's not more of a question. Okay. In my understanding, I think nuclear energy is the best way to be able to provide solutions to the energy needs that we really need to do in our country. Then, in my also understanding is that the government needs to do a lot. One is to do civic education. It's really, really important for the government to actually be able to do a lot of civic education to the local communities, not entirely in the coastal area, but towards the entire Kenya. Because without the civic education, this particular project will not be able to see the light of the day. Thank you.
Okay.
I've requested for permission for 3 more minutes to just get the last 3.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll be stoned when I'm leaving here.
Sawa. Then there's a burning one there too.
Hi everyone, my name is Abigail Rugendo. You can call me Abby. So I'm an urban planner and EIA expert. I'd like to ask now about the nuclear plant, because the plant just doesn't affect the immediate surrounding it's placed on. So in case of, like you said about the Fukushima accident, yes, when the plant exploded, it only affected 2 people, but also the studies afterwards, it shows that there was a case of like 100,000 new cancer patients over a period of time because of this. So like the intensity of the research, is it focused on just bringing the investor or also just helping the community? Because also Kilifi is among like, not to like shame, or it's like among the poor counties. So how do you help them if you put such a sensitive plant in their midst and there's no like action plan surrounding their safety and how they will interact with the plant? Yeah.
You're looking at low risk, high risk, carbon, nuclear, and I think I'm going to walk out of this meeting not getting the direction to that. As a carbon expert, policy oriented, I would want to know from the panel that at the end of the day, this discussion, is nuclear development in Kenya the best option for us as Kenyans to look forward to? Is it an option for us or not? Just that.
You need a clear response, and we will arrive at that. So maybe the last question
to our government officer is that you just gave an example of South Africa. I was in South Africa in April, and there they have a rationing of 8 hours electricity in the day. You can't use electricity in the day for 8 hours. So I don't think that's a benchmarking solution. You can just tell us about for giving us an example on it. And also, the other thing is that we are having industries pouring effluent in the rivers. So how are you sure that you guys will curb the waste that is coming from the reactors? And also, I don't know why you guys charge energy expensive, yet we get it free from the environment. Thank you.
That's very interesting. I mean, why would you charge someone for nuclear when you have solar, when you have hydro, when you have wind? And I think, Pasi?
There's one more.
There's one more.
If you have the mic, your 1 minute started.
This nuclear, we want to put it in Kilifi, where we have mangrove. So far, it has been proven it is the mangrove they prevent the hurricanes. I think explains why Africa, we are spared compared to Europeans. Don't you think the nuclear power with the development will create hurricanes? Then we create our own Fukushima in the near future. And also MDBs, they say, World Bank say they cannot fund nuclear. So it would be very expensive loans to self-injury of some sort. Also for solar, there is one for hybrid. Okay, I've heard there is net metering. This for the Strathmore guy. Solar, so far I've had the two technologies there for net metering, which you can get to the grid, and the one for batteries. Can't you, since the battery technology is not yet mature, can we just use the grid tie, the hybrid one, as we wait for the battery technology to mature and reduce the cost?
I think.
Hello. We have Gerald. Gerald, if you're online, kindly, you have a question. The floor is yours. You can ask your question. Gerald Ndegwa.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, loud and clear.
Amazing. Love technology. Hate what is happening. Anyway, my name is Gerald Ndegwa. I'm an EDF. That's an environmental defense force. And I really have this question because I feel like we are overlooking it. We are in a country that's experiencing adverse climate changes. Like where we are in Nairobi, where you think it would be safe, our governor simply gave an idea to have canoes in Nairobi to help cover floods. These are the people we are expecting to give us solutions. Hello guys from the government. And you said guys, come up with a nuclear thought. Hold up the nuclear idea. I understand that there were 3 sites that you guys were scouting. There was the Turkana area, there was the Kisumu area, and now there's the Kilifi area. The Kilifi area was chosen for whatever reason that was. I don't know. But I understand you need to have water to cool the reactor. Right? That's okay. I understand. And that's only the ocean. The water is abundant. However, I would really want to know, my friends, has anyone really addressed the fact that we are going to use uranium to get this nuclear energy? If we use uranium, everyone knows, anyone who cares to know, knows that uranium is a carcinogen.
Yes.
What's in place? What's in place for people to not get the same? I had my good friend, Musalia Bariako, Johan, Musalia sana, my fellow artist. However, sorry, I digress. Are we putting in place plans to ensure that Chernobyl doesn't happen in Kenya? And if not, how are we getting the uranium? Where from? Is this really thought for? It's again, let me just ask blatantly. Is it another cash cow that we want to introduce to our country? Thank you so much. I love that I'm anonymous. Nobody sees my face. So no face, no case. Correct? I want the answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gerald.
Yeah, we have Caleb Kundu on the line. Kindly go live and ask your question.
Caleb, we can hear you. No, we can't.
Okay, can you unmute your mic?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hello, I'm Caleb Kundu.
Okay.
I'm a biologist. I also work as an intern at the Kenya Nuclear Power Energy. I'm so interested in energy because it will give a solution. And I'm so impressed by my senior, how he answers those questions. Okay, straight to the question. How can Kenya balance high initial costs along the gestation period of low carbon energy projects like nuclear and renewables
with urgent need to achieve climate goals without overburdening taxpayers? That is question number one. Question number two is that what specific measures are in place to address the risk associated with nuclear energy, such as radioactive waste disposal, potential accidents, or security threats, given Kenya's current infrastructure and emergency response capabilities? Last but not least, nuclear energy will give us solutions in agriculture, health, and all those issues that will be addressed. So let us, Kenya is ready for nuclear power. Thank you.
I would take your remarks with a pinch of salt, but that is why we're here. And there seems to be one. Is there one lady from online? Great,
yes.
great.
According to the name that I see, it's Regan Awino. So, okay.
Thank you, panelists. It's not a lady. This is I'm a gentleman.
Karibu.
I know. Asante, if you see the name Awino, of course, where I come from, it's associated with ladies. But you know that some of us are also men who have such net. Anyway, to the point. Mine is not really to ask a question, but to throw in like a few pointers or areas of consideration for us. It's a good thing that we are having this conversation. And in the process of having this conversation, sorry I joined in late, so I might have not heard what was said initially. But I can be able to indicate the following one. That as a country, I believe the government agencies that are in place, from the environmental regulator, which is NEMA, from the nuclear regulator, which is the Kenya Nuclear Regulatory Authority, among others, are in a better position to be able to articulate the aspects of this topic we're discussing. Case in point, in NEMA, they are charged with environmental matters and to be able to safeguard. In the process, they use various assessment tools, the strategic environmental social assessment, which is currently being done by PEFF. After that, there will be the environmental and social impact assessment, which will be done for the specific site. So it is important to note that currently, from the conversation where we are still at the strategic environmental and social assessment level, whereby studies are being conducted, and once that has been done, they will follow the IAEA guideline and do what we are calling specific site characterization. After that site characterization has been done, is when now they go to the environmental social impact assessment. So at this level and juncture, the issues which are being brought out in terms of environmental concerns are at a national, regional level. Regional, I mean by the coastal region, so to speak.
Yeah.
But once now...
Have we lost it? Oh. Okay. But I think we were able to capture some of his sentiments. And I would want... Sorry, just quickly come to your point, just finalize on your question so that we can move on and the panelists can give their responses as they give their final remarks.
Okay, thank you for that. What I just want to say is that as Kenyans, as we are discussing this topic, let us look at it at holistic. Just in comparison, I know people compare, for example, the aspect of waste management in the country. But the same case can be also compared with the mode of transport. The use of border versus the use of airplane. We have them in the country. It's a matter of pros and cons, and I believe that as agencies in the country, we are set up to the task that are supposed to do. Collaboration is important, and civic education that is given and has to take place. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the trade-offs you were speaking. I would propose, as you give your final remarks, pick a question that you felt it is in your scope and in your area of expertise so that we can wrap up on a very high note. There's a following exercise that we want to get to so that to assist the people who are saying they're not arriving or getting that clarity, We want to help. We want them to help you, yourself, Nupair, the researchers, on a bit of sense making and understanding, and thinking through the process of, yes, this is something that is nice to have. What does it take then for us to have it? What are the risks involved if we have it? So I think I will start again left to right. 1.5 minutes.
Yes. So I want to, and I've had so many questions, especially on the economics of nuclear power. And I want to say this. When I say that nuclear power on a cost is cost effective compared to the other sources, compared to the others, I'm not saying that nuclear power, that is the path Kenya should take. I'm just making a statement of fact. Countries make decisions on which energy path they would like to take. So like in Germany, the new government that was voted in 1998 made a decision to just close nuclear power plants. It didn't have an effect on, it was not from science, it was not from anything. You just make a decision. And that's why President Trump ran for this second term on the fact that he's going to take the US out of the Paris commitments and reverse all those climate change policies. And people agreed with him and voted for, and that's what, and they gave him the mandate. So that's the part, and I want Kenyans to be very, so Kenyans, on our own, we can, and I am a believer in the 2010 Constitution, we can make a decision that notwithstanding all these other things, on our own, on this basis of the participation, we can take this energy path. And that is still fine, because if you go renewable, there are trade-offs, there are cost implications, there are benefits. Also, if you go coal, the same thing happens. Mm-hmm. And that's a message that I want people to understand, so that so that it's important to understand to get that point. As I conclude, this development reality that Kenya is faced with, that we have a problem with our institutions, we have a problem with how we generate evidence. So, for example, you see studies that say, one side, people saying that there are studies, feasibility studies that have been done on the impact of environment, and we are not seeing those studies online or available under the right of information. That deficit should not go into the processes of evidence. The idea is this, that we should, that as a society, as we go into the future, that process of policy making, together with what is happening on the ground, should go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And once we are able to achieve that, it's something that will allow us to move forward, so that people are almost, we will never be agree on everything. Mm-hmm. We need to be conscious with that. Mm-hmm. But that is something that we'll be able to say with certainty that there was a study done. There was something that was put forward. There's a process on how to deal with the West. There's a process to deal with all these things.
Due diligence.
Yes, all that in itself. And that government, when government officials speak before such forums, that people take with trust what they say. And that is something that I think that learning from all the finance bill that was rejected, learning from all these policy problems that Kenya has faced, that is the direction that we go. Because once I see, and the engineer here has spoken about the issue of education, all these problems that I see are the problems that we are confronting as a society, that we've been lied to for a very long period of time, and we are now catching up with them.
So that's the distrust.
Thank you so much.
First of all, I'd just like to thank you guys for having a discussion like this. It's come at a timely time.
And I'm just wishing that more sessions like this can take place. I think it's clear that we cannot afford to just do business as usual when it comes to nuclear, power program in Kenya. So there are steps that the government should really take to bring communities on board, to bring people on board, and not just tick boxes. That's what I'm seeing. It's very clear, like even from the audience and from the people online, that what he said, mutual trust is not there. Like people are not believing in the government anymore because of what has happened before, either in renewable or fossil fuel energy. So there's need to correct that. There's also need to really assess whether, I'm sorry, I've still not bought into the idea that this is the direction to go. So there's really a lot of need to expound on this conversation a little bit more. And somebody said that 2034 is not a short time. It's a short time for somebody who's lived in these different areas for the past 50, 40 years. So I think we should slow down. The power has...
No, it's okay. It's okay. Speak.
I think we should take a lot of time as we are thinking about these things. And then there are a few things that I forgot to mention, and it's good that you're coming there. Somebody raised the issue of uranium exploration, and I think it's one of the key components within the CESA that's supposed, within the nuclear program, that we are supposed to have a uranium exploration plan. It's not... Conversations on that are not very clear. Conversations on the nuclear research reactor as well in Konza City is not clear as well. So I think a lot of conversation needs to be had before we make a final decision. Yeah, I think that's me.
I think I've loved the discussion. I think it's being academia. We realize that it's always good to have opposing opinions and deliberations, freedom of thought, freedom of expression. In academia, there's one thing they call, it should be freedom of thought. So where, even as people do research, people will always do conflicting researches. One would say, they call an hypothesis and say, this is good, this is bad. And I feel it's always good to have such discussions because it brings the discourse forward. It takes the discourse forward. Because maybe people pro-nuclear there's something they're not seeing on the social side. But also on the social side, people on the social side, probably there's something they're not seeing from the technical side. So I think there's supposed to be room for us to be able to now take that feedback from the regulator, from the academia, and see what is the best way forward. And I think it's always good to have discussions based on facts sometimes. And we are sorry, probably we've gone to the fact side so much, but also the social side is also important, because someone in the audience mentioned that mangroves prevent hurricanes. I think no. Is the fact that you are at the equator, it's actually the equator that prevents hurricanes, and that is a fact. So it's always good to maybe have discussions based on that, but also taking care of that person on the grassroots who probably will not be able to have that fact at their disposal. And then someone mentioned the role of academia in all this. So the role of academia, such technologies, it's not only on the technical side. So one, you have to build the technical capacity, which I think the government is doing very well. I have a colleague who studied nuclear technology masters at UON. Whether they are employed in that role, I'm not sure, I don't think so. But at least that capacity has been developed. But there's also this other aspect of what are the social implications for these technologies? And as academia, I think that is one of the feedback I'm taking in, that even as we develop these technologies, it's good to have that. Though, someone mentioned that he works from Kilifi and all that, so there's a project you're currently working on productive use of renewable energy in Kilifi, among other counties. And because, the thing about energy is, someone mentioned that it is free, yes, but even farming, even food, it is free. Like, but someone has to go do something to convert water, heat, photosynthesis and all that, to convert it into food. And you have to appreciate that effort, right? So the same thing with energy. In as much as the resource is free, there is cost that goes towards harnessing that resource to a usable form. And that is the cost that comes with energy. So we can't have anything for free, because I cannot work for free, for sure. Technical expertise, and no one can work for free. So we need to appreciate that these things come at a cost, and that is also in energy. And in productive use of renewable energy, what we are looking at is how do we harness this energy to improve incomes for the people on the ground. And interestingly enough, we were looking at fish value chains and fruits value chains, which has been mentioned by the colleague from Kilifi, which I think as we conclude on that project, it would be good to see the final outcomes. I think I'll take his contact so that we can be able to discuss on those fronts. So, and on the land issue, let me finish with this. On the land issue, every technology of energy has a land footprint. And ironically, I think nuclear has one of the smallest land footprints. Like to have a 50 megawatts of nuclear, you need a smaller land than to have 50 megawatts of wind or 50 megawatts of solar. So on the land issue, it will always be a problem. And speaking of wind, I was also in Nyandarua County on the same project of productive use of renewable energy. They were mentioning that there's a wind power plant that did not take off because of land issues. And of course, the community now, they want that project back, kind of, because, it also ran into these political headwinds. Of course, someone did not do their due diligence when doing the project, but I think, so in as much as you're saying those people will lose by having that project there, but someone would say, I wish we had this project. So these trade-offs are many, and this is not a discussion we can conclude for today. Someone mentioned that, what are we taking home today? I think what you're taking home today is, we've had a discussion, and it is not conclusive for now, but I think we need more such forums to air our views, and then probably we update our repository of knowledge, and then we come with better knowledge, probably. Yeah. And then also on the audience also, probably there's something they've learned that probably they've not learned it so well, so they continue learning it more, so that as long as the discourse continues, that is the thing that we're supposed to have. Let's have more of these discussions, and let me end there. I think Thank you. Can speak.
And before Mr. Chesire signs us off, that's what Faith here was raising concern when she said we're already in phase 2 on that milestone approach. So I don't know what impact the environmental impact assessment will have at this point in time if plans are already still underway. So maybe you can take that as you wrap up.
But the construction hasn't started yet. That's starting in 2027, so there's still time.
Percy, you were saying something, or?
I was saying phase 2 is going on, but based on the information that has been shared, the construction is only starting in 2027, right? So there was a question that came from the lady in black, and she wanted to know what is the progress in the development of the nuclear plant. So there's been 2027 that has been cited as a construction starting date, and then there's 2034 that has also been a date that has been cited for commissioning. So there's lack of...
Yeah, thank you. Let me just start by really thanking all of you for the questions that has come in. This really shows the interest that we have, and also the concern that actually is being taken through by all of us. And I believe that is for the betterment of our nation, for the betterment of our people, and for the betterment of our environment. There are those two dates, 2027 and 2034. A nuclear plant takes some bit of time to be built. From the best practices, between 7 years, 5 years to 7 years. So when you look at 2027, what we are looking forward is that now will be the commissioning date of constructing. You start construction, where now you're pouring the concrete. That's now where you're doing if you're building this house, you're doing the foundational. You remember how you do the foundation of the plant. Then 2034, because of this 5 to 7 years of construction, then that's the day that now you're connecting the electricity from the plant to the electric grid. So those are the 2 dates maybe I want to clarify upon. Secondly, there is a friend of mine ambaye uliza nani anasukuma agenda hii, na ningependa kujibu kwa kusema hivi. Serikali ina jukumu ya kuwezesha ya kuwa kila mwananchi anapata huduma, na huduma ambayo ni ya muhimu ni huduma ya kuwa na umeme ama kuwa na kawi. So to answer that, this is a government of Kenya project. It is not being pushed from somewhere else. And as you can remember, I said it started in 2009, 2010, and we are working towards that. And there's a friend of mine who has asked me, when I go home, is this a viable option for the country? And let me answer this by saying this way. According to the Intergovernmental Agreement on Climate Change, IPCC, they usually have what is called Annual Conference of Parties, COPs. The first COP that started in 1995. And for the first time, after 23 years, in COP 28, the parties of the Paris Agreement, when they were doing what is called the global stocktake, they agreed for the first time that nuclear should be included as an energy source that will help in the clean energy transition. So to answer if this discussion or if actually nuclear power plant program is viable for the country, I will say in affirmative, yes. And another person asked, what are the challenges and how are you overcoming them? And I really want to agree with what Msanii alikuwa anasema ya kuwa the biggest concern is the negligence of the people who have been given the responsibility of guarding and ensuring that everything is done according to the laid down framework. It is true that actually the impact or the probability of a nuclear accident happening is close to 0. But the impact of it transcends many generations. So that is the issue. So I want to tell my friend that when we are working in the nuclear industry, and I will state it again, that we have to do not for the purposes of pleasing the international community, but you are working under a club. You are working under a framework that is being ensured internationally that you will follow the best practices. I know it's a tall order, and that is why we are taking this time to ensure, and most of our people who have been trained, most of them have been trained not only in the country but outside. And I believe that at the end of the day, the aspect of nuclear safety culture, which is supposed to be taken by the top leadership of all the national nuclear institutions, should be taken into consideration. Ndegwa talked about the issue of uranium, and also Faith has also alluded to it. When you are undertaking the nuclear power program, there are 19 infrastructure issues that you need to look at. One of them, it is called nuclear fuel cycle. The nuclear fuel cycle, it talks about how you can get the uranium from the ore. You do the milling of the same, you do the enrichment of that, you do the fuel fabrication, and then you put it into the reactor, and then now you do the disposal of the same. And most places, most countries that actually are using nuclear power plant, they are not doing the full cycle of the nuclear fuel cycle. What they do is that if, Fred, you are the technology provider, you bring the nuclear plant plus the fuel for the rest of the period of that. But me as a country, it is not mandatory that even if I have the uranium in my backyard, it's not about that the uranium that I'm going to use in the nuclear plant. It's like when you're buying a car and you have oil, maybe, or like Nigeria. It's not that when you're buying the car that then you're going to ensure that your own fuel, you're going to petrol station to be able now to put the fuel on it. One thing that also we have been talking about is stakeholder engagement. And wapendwa, ningependa kusema hivi ya kuwa tulipoanza kushirikiana na wakazi wa Kilifi, tulikuwa tunaongea pamoja na wao, lakini wakasema ya kuwa hii engagement sio mzuri sana. So what we do, let us have a proper engagement. So we formed what is called a 13 committee members from the community, even though it did not go as it was supposed to because of watu walikuwa wanalalamika kwa sababu hao 13 committee members vile wamechaguliwa hawafanyi kazi vizuri, ikafika mahali pako tukasema let us go back and see how do we want to engage together with the community of Uyombo and the community of Kilifi. My friend from Kilifi has really put a case why we don't need to have the nuclear power plant because of the fishing landing site, the beach management unit, the mangrove forests that are there, the ecosystem that is there. And also, I want to say this, that when you look at other places where they've been able now to implement the nuclear power plant, this community of the beach management unit are there. These people who are doing fishing are there. These people who are getting their livelihood from the nuclear power, from the fish or from the sea, they are there. I was in the United States, a nuclear plant called St. Anna. St. Anna was a plant that was built and they created a lake around it. And when you go there, actually, there is a full ecosystem of fishing. And it has been proven scientifically that where the water that is coming from the nuclear power plant, that is, the water that is being used for nuclear power plant is only for cooling. I want to explain this a bit. In the nuclear power plant, especially there are different types, but I'm just looking at what's called a pressurized water reactor. It has 3 loops. The first loop, where maji ambaye inazunguka tu, ambaye haitoki, it is in the reactor vessel. And then it goes through a mechanism of heat exchange through a pressurizer. Then it is able now to generate the steam that goes to the turbines. And now the last part, ambayo, so maji ambayo inakuja inafanya cooling, it is on the 3rd loop. And this 3rd loop does not in any way come into contact with the 1st loop. That is where now the fission products takes place. And at the end of the day, when this water is being taken back to the ocean, there are regulations that it might not be more than 1.5 to 2 degrees. And it has been proven that that is where major breeding of fish is taking place. It is, when you look at it, by the way, and when you go to the nuclear power plant where it's operating, you will be able now to see where there's the discharge. That is where now you can see a lot of birds hovering upon because there are fish down there.
Thank you, Chisire.
Yeah.
I think just to give you a final remark.
Yeah,
because
so,
we're out of time. Yeah.
okay. So in conclusion, I know I've talked a lot, but I want to say that this is a discussion that we need to have. It's a discussion that we need to be engaging. And lastly, when you are doing the citing, because we have been able now to say it is either in the Turkana, the Lake Victoria, and now the coastal. There is a process that you need to do. It's called the screening of the site, where first of all you do the regional, where the best thing that you need to look is where there is a large water source.
Water body.
Yeah, water body. And then you can see it is in the Lake Turkana, in the Lake Victoria, and in the Indian Ocean. The second thing that you need to look at is the exclusion. A place where there is a rift valley, you cannot go because of the tectonic movement. So you can see now the rift valley from Lake Turkana all the way down, it was excluded. The last part is about the issue of population and also infrastructure development. You can see the Lake Victoria was excluded. So we remained with the coastal region. The coastal region had almost 12 sites, and all those sites were being ranked. And then it happened that the best site was in Kilifi County, the alternate site was in Kwale. But now, as my friend who said, that actually the regulators are able to give conclusive analysis because they are the environmental and also they are the nuclear regulators. Yeah. So as we conclude, let me finish now and say that I want to say that the nuclear power plant and the nuclear power program is here to help all of us, not only to meet our needs for electricity, but also it can be used for hydrogen production. It can be used for water desalination. It can be used for district heating. It can be used for industrial processes. These are all things that comes in as a package, and I believe that this is the beginning of a greater conversation, and we are willing to continue together with you. And by the way, for the people of Kilifi and for the entire country, we will be rolling out our intensive engagement awareness so that at the end of the day, we can know what we are doing. I'm sorry I have not answered your question because I believe this really needs...
So for me, it's to thank each and every single person on the panel. You guys, it's a hot seat, but you did your very best. So thank you so much, Edwin, Dominic, Faith, and Leo. Before we close, just as I'll be doing the thanks to everybody, each one of you was given 6 sticky notes. So just quickly, just a quick check hand as we're going out. We would like you to write on those sticky notes and come and paste them on these different papers, right? So already I will give you a hint. On this side is the people who are nuclear development in Kenya is a low carbon solution that we should go for. And on this side, because it was a debate, the people who are just, your perspective and outlook is, it's a high-risk gamble.
You call them gamblers.
I did call them gamblers, but no. So as you're going out, just pick the side that you're on. We've put what your thoughts are, what are the drivers and possible futures. So that's as we're leaving the auditorium. Finally, thank you to Daystar University for hosting us today and for allowing us to utilize this public space that you have for the conversation today. A huge, huge thank you to the Henry Chible Foundation for supporting this work for the past 8 to 9 years. The conversations are relevant. We started off very small, but now the issues and the topics we were discussing in 2016 are coming alive today. So just the impact of the work. So thank you. And finally, a big thank you to everybody who registered and are here. A big thank you to everybody on the online platform, Zoom, and those watching via YouTube. And a big, big thank you to the entire SID team. So Emily, Crispus, Maureen, Helen, Duncan, myself, Arthur, Peter, Alicia, in absentia. Thank you to everybody. So with that, we do have an online survey that Crispus keeps nudging me to talk about. Please scan the QR code and just give a review. Should we have more of these conversations? What other topics would you like us to bring to the Public Energy Futures series in Kenya? And what more can we do? Or even how can we work together? That goes for you too. Representatives of the government, academia, community, private sector, do let us know through the form. So with that, asanteni sana, and until the next Public Energy Futures Forum next year, we wish you a happy holiday season, and the things that you will put into this, Duncan, I believe we're gonna get an illustrator to illustrate what your thoughts and views are, so please do leave the sticky notes. So I'll give you the final word, Dan.
No, I think you've said everything. You've captured everyone. Just probably from the gentleman who's painting us a picture. Thank you so much, because that is what we intend to do here. We don't want, I mean, this is the expert panelists, but we want to get feedback from your position as someone who's touched base with people in Kilifi. So you can just come down here, or not, if you think it is a high-risk gamble, tell us why you think so. Tell us what are the drivers, like you said, and we can finish up with the possible futures. Should we embark on nuclear and it doesn't turn out well, we need to see on this side? If you think that this is a solution that, of course, needs some tweaking, some fine-tuning, some polishing, we can also have that on this other side. So it's a dialectic approach.
With us, stay with us, interact with our panelists, and I'm sure we'll have a good day altogether. Asante sana.
Great. So please feel free to come. Don't be shy. Nobody's going to judge you if you're a solutionist or a gambler.
If you think it's a high-risk gamble, kuja hapa. Mimi niko na wewe.